Chapter 3406. Tianxing Shui Chu and the others could not calm down. In the past, Lu Ming's cultivation was already terrifying enough. He could kill the geniuses from the famed mountains. During this time, Lu Ming's ancient divine body and cultivation had broken through one after another. How powerful had he become? No need for formalities. The rest of you can go about your business. Tianxing and Shui Chu stay. I have something to ask you. Lu Ming said. Then, the others left, leaving Tianxing and Shui Chu behind. Alliance leader, what do you want to ask us? Tianxing was the first to speak. I want to ask you about the famed mountains. Lu Ming said. Famed mountains. Tianxing and Shui Chu were shocked. They looked at each other and saw the doubt in each other's eyes. Could it be that Lu Ming had started to have designs on the famed mountains? Alliance leader, are you going to the famed mountains? Tianxing asked. That's right. Lu Ming nodded and said, the resources on the famed mountains are 100 times more than Breezy Mountain. Since I'm here, wouldn't it be a pity if I didn't go there? And I'm not the only one who wants to go. I want to bring the two of you with me. Together? Tianxing and Shui Chu's faces changed again. Why? Are the famed mountains dangerous? Lu Ming asked. Yes, they are. Tianxing nodded and said with a serious face, in this world there are geniuses from different forces and races in the primitive universe who cultivate the primitive divine body. These geniuses came here to cultivate. So, in this world the strong preys on the weak. This is especially obvious in the famed mountains. Those who are not powerful enough can easily be killed in the famed mountains. So, although they know that the speed of condensing primitive divine crystals on the famed mountains is 100 times faster than on the small mountains, most of the people who are not powerful enough would rather stay on the small mountains and slowly condense primitive divine crystals and cultivate than stay on the famed mountains. Oh! Lu Ming nodded and said, tell me more about the famed mountains. All right. Tianxing nodded. He organized his words and said, in this world, there are a total of 13 famed mountains. They are scattered all over the place. However, these 13 famed mountains have long been occupied. However, the situation of being occupied is also different. Out of the 13 famed mountains, 11 of them are unified. Every famed mountain is occupied by a force. Every famed mountain has a mountain master who is very powerful. Those who come later can't establish themselves in those famed mountains. If you want to enter those famed mountains to condense primordial divine crystals, you can only join the force of that famed mountain. If there is a power that wants to enter a famed mountain to develop, only the remaining 2 have a chance. That is because those 2 mountains are still in a state of separation. There are many large and small powers fighting, and they have not been unified yet. Tianxing explained the general situation of the 13 famous mountains to Li Mu. What about Fengyan Mountain? That Yuntian alliance seems to be just one of the forces in Fengyan Mountain. Lu Ming said, that's right. Fengyan Mountain is one of the 2 famous mountains that haven't been unified. Moreover, it's the famous mountain closest to our Windy Mountain. The Yuntian alliance is just one of the forces involved. Tianxing nodded. I see. All right, let's go to Fengyan Mountain then. Lu Ming said. Fengyan Mountain? Alliance leader, but Tianxing and Shui Chu's faces changed. With their strength, it was very dangerous to go to Fengyan Mountain. Why? Don't you want to go to the famed mountains to cultivate? Do you want to stay in this small place? Lu Ming said plainly, of course we want to go to the famed mountains. However, most of the people in the Dragon Alliance aren't strong enough. If we go to the famed mountains and get targeted by other forces, we might be in danger, Shui Chu said with a solemn face. It's okay. I will protect the people of the Dragon Alliance. I won't let you get killed. Lu Ming said confidently. now that his combat strength had skyrocketed, and at the same time he had Chocho. If he and Chocho worked together, their strength would be even more shocking. He was confident that he could establish himself in the famed mountains. Tianxing and Shui Chu's faces changed. Then they said, "Since the alliance leader wants to go, we will naturally accompany him. I just don't know if the others want to go. Everyone is willing to go. Those who are willing to go with me will follow me. Those who are unwilling, I won't force them," Lu Ming said. 2 days later, Lu Ming gathered everyone in the Dragon Alliance and told them his thoughts. When everyone heard that Lu Ming wanted to go to Fengyan Mountain, their faces changed. In the end, a small half of them chose to stay in Fengyan Mountain. After all, although Fengyan Mountain was very tempting, it was too dangerous. If they were not careful, they might lose their lives. More than 40 people chose to follow Lu Ming to Fengyan Mountain. They chose to believe in Lu Ming. On the second day, Lu Ming led the 40 people of the Dragon Alliance and set off for Fengyan Mountain. Fengyan Mountain was quite far away from Fengyan Mountain. It took them half a month to reach the boundary of Fengyan Mountain. Is that one of the famed mountains, Fengyan Mountain? It is indeed magnificent. Lu Ming raised his eyes and looked into the distance. On the ground in front of him, there was a huge mountain. This mountain was huge and boundless. Fengyan Mountain could not be compared to it at all. Fengyan Mountain was already big enough. It was 100,000 feet tall. However, compared to Fengyan Mountain, it was just a small dot. It was majestic and grand. Even though they were far away, they could feel a terrifying pressure coming from it. This pressure was as if there was a real, primordial divine spirit sitting in front of them. Famed mountains were the places that gave birth to primordial divine spirits. Legend had it that countless years ago, the belly of each famed mountain gave birth to a primordial divine spirit. Although countless years had passed, the famed mountains were still the sacred grounds for those who cultivated the primordial divine body. No, it should be the sacred grounds for cultivators. It was said that even if one did not cultivate the primordial divine body, they could still gain great benefits by cultivating in the famed mountains. Is this a famed mountain? The people of the Dragon Alliance mumbled with anticipation. Many people had been in this world for many years but had never been to a famed mountain. Let's go! Lu Ming waved his hand and led the people of the Dragon Alliance towards the famed mountain. The famed mountain was vast, and no one knew how big it was. Anyway, with Lu Ming's eyesight, he could not see the end of it. The dozens of them entering the famed mountain was no different from a few ants entering a vast ocean. Not long after, they set foot at the foot of the famed mountain and entered the range of the famed mountain. What a rich primordial divine chi! The primordial divine chi here is at least 10 times that of Fengyan Mountain. It is also 10 times faster to condense primordial divine crystals here. Many people of the Dragon Alliance exclaimed. This was only the foot of Fengyan Mountain. If they were in the core area, the primordial divine chi would be 100 times denser than that of Fengyan Mountain. Lu Ming sensed carefully and felt that the primordial divine chi was not as simple as it seemed. Within the range of Fengyan Mountain, he felt a strong pressure on his body. In this place, their movements and speed would become slower. Chapter 3407. In Fengyan Mountain, there was a strong pressure that could suppress one's speed and movements, making them slower than in other places. Lu Ming also felt that there was a special characteristic. Lu Ming closed his eyes and sensed for a while. Then he showed a hint of joy. He realized that under such pressure, he could actually speed up the comprehension of the divine power of origin. It was faster than in other places, as expected of the place that gave birth to the primordial gods. It's too mysterious. Lu Ming exclaimed. What kind of existence were the primordial gods? When the world was first created, a group of tyrannical existences were born naturally. They were born with endless power and could control the divine power of origin. It was a piece of cake for them to destroy planets and galaxies. Now, the cultivators constantly comprehended divine power and awakened the divine power of origin. They were only getting closer to the divine power of origin. This place had given birth to the primordial gods, so there were mysterious remnants of the divine power of origin. Of course, it would be very useful for the comprehension of the divine power of origin. Let's go into the mountain. Lu Ming waved his hand and led the people of the Dragon Alliance into Fengyun Mountain. Fengyun Mountain was very big. They didn't meet anyone along the way. Soon, they came to a valley and stopped in front of it. The environment here was very good, and the primordial divine qi was very dense. It was at least 100 times denser than that of Mount Xiaofeng. It was suitable to cultivate here. In the future, we will cultivate here. This will be the headquarters of the Dragon Alliance. Lu Ming said. Then he stepped forward and slashed at a 10-meter-tall boulder with his palm like a knife. Boom! The palm slashed at the boulder. The boulder shook nonstop, but it wasn't cut apart. It only had a small hole. It's so hard! Lu Ming was shocked. Originally, he wanted to cut off a boulder and carve the words Dragon Alliance on it and erect it in front of the valley. But he didn't expect that he couldn't cut it off at all. His palm strike just now was so powerful that even a star would be destroyed. He didn't expect that he couldn't even cut a 10-meter-tall boulder here. It could only be said that the place that gave birth to the primordial gods was too extraordinary. The rocks were incomparably hard and difficult to cut. I don't believe it. Lu Ming gritted his teeth. He couldn't afford to lose face in front of his subordinates. He activated the battle character art and quadrupled his battle prowess. He circulated all 11 types of god powers in his body. At the same time, he used the heavenly demon golden body, which made his palms even harder than god tools. Boom! 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 Lu Ming waved his hand and continuously chopped at the rocks. The rocks trembled and shattered. After 100 consecutive slashes, the rock was finally cut off. Then, Lu Ming continued to repair it. Half a day later, a stone tablet that was 10 meters tall and full of holes was finally formed. There were 2 large words carved on it, Dragon Alliance. Lu Ming was so tired that he was panting and sweating profusely. Dealing with a stone tablet was even more tiring than fighting a great battle. Fortunately, it was settled. Afterwards, they entered the valley, made some arrangements, and then settled down here. Many people could not wait to condense primordial divine crystals. Sure enough, a month later, they successfully condensed a piece of primordial divine crystal, which made everyone ecstatic. 1 piece a month. This speed was too fast. One should know that it would take 10 years at Mount Xiaofeng. 10 years had become a month. Many people were a little confused and felt as if they were dreaming. Then, many people started to think about how many divine crystals Lu Ming would ask them to hand over. The best they had heard of in the other famous mountains was that they had to hand over 9 out of 10 divine crystals and keep 1 for themselves. This was already the best treatment. Some places even asked them to hand over 19 out of 20 divine crystals. Even so, it was much better than those small mountains. Countless people wanted to join. Then, how much would Lu Ming ask? No matter how much Lu Ming asked, they would accept it. After all, in Fengyun Mountain, they needed Lu Ming's protection. You guys should focus on condensing primordial divine crystals. The ratio to hand over is the same as Mount Xiaofeng. Lu Ming's voice was heard. What? Everyone, including Tianxing and Shui Chu, was stunned. The ratio to hand over is the same as Mount Xiaofeng? In Mount Xiaofeng, most people could keep half of the primordial divine crystals. They only had to hand over 5 out of 10 divine crystals. That was possible here too? Most people thought that they had misheard and were dreaming. Wasn't this treatment a little too generous? In Fengyun Mountain, they could condense 1 primordial divine crystal a month and 12 pieces a year. That would be 1,200 pieces in 100 years. If they handed over half, they would still have 600 pieces. In Mount Xiaofeng, they could only condense 5 pieces in 100 years. The difference was like heaven and earth. What? If you don't want this ratio, then hand over more. Lu Ming said lightly. No, thank you, Alliance Leader. Thank you, Alliance Leader. Tianxing and the others quickly bowed to Lu Ming. Their hearts were burning with passion. In the past, they had no choice but to do so. Now, they were more sincere to Lu Ming. At least in this world, they would sincerely support Lu Ming. Lu Ming smiled. These people had risked their lives to follow him to Fengyun Mountain. Naturally, he would not mistreat them. If other people joined them in the future, they would not receive such treatment. All right, let's continue. Lu Ming waved his hand and went to the depths of the valley alone. In the depths of the valley, there was a small cave. It was very quiet and suitable for cultivation. Not bad. Lu Ming smiled and sat cross-legged in the cave. He did not take out the primordial divine crystal to refine. Instead, he carefully felt the pressure from the outside world. Indeed, under this pressure, his understanding of the origin divine power factor increased rapidly. It was even faster than when he was cultivating under the primordial god statue. After cultivating for 2 days, Lu Ming took out another piece of primordial divine crystal to refine. He realized that when he was refining the primordial divine crystal, it did not affect his understanding of the origin divine power factor. When refining the primordial divine crystal, the ancient god's heart would refine it instinctively. It did not require too much effort. Soon, it had been 3 months since Lu Ming and the others arrived at Fengyun Mountain. Boom! Right at this moment, a loud explosion came from outside the valley. Lu Ming opened his eyes and ended his cultivation. Soon, a member of the Dragon Alliance rushed in and reported, Alliance Leader, this is bad. The other forces of Fengyun Mountain are here. They really came? Lu Ming muttered. Fengyun Mountain had many forces of different sizes. These forces were fighting for territory and often killed each other. Their arrival here would definitely not be peaceful. Once they were discovered, they would definitely be attacked. After 3 months of peace, they were finally discovered. Let's go. Lu Ming took a step forward and turned into a ray of light as he rushed out of the valley. Soon, Lu Ming arrived outside the valley. Outside the valley, Tianxing, Shui-Chu, and the other members of the Dragon Alliance gathered together and guarded the entrance of the valley. At the front of the valley, there were 3 young men standing there with cold expressions. Chapter 3408. 3 young men in white robes stood there coldly as they scanned the members of the Dragon Alliance. Lu Ming stepped out and landed in front of Tianxing and the others. Alliance Leader. Tianxing and the others bowed at Lu Ming. You are the Alliance Leader of this stupid Dragon Alliance. The young man in the middle of the 3 young men in white robes asked. This person was quite handsome and had a tiger mark in the middle of his brows. He looked quite majestic. Lu Ming didn't answer him and looked around. He noticed that there was a deep slash mark on the stone tablet. The words Dragon Alliance on it were destroyed beyond recognition. A murderous look flashed across Lu Ming's eyes. The stone steel that he had painstakingly fixed up was actually destroyed. Anger rose from his heart, and he became even more daring. His face darkened. Kid, I asked you a question. Didn't you hear me? The young man with the tiger mark in the middle of his brows shouted coldly as murderous intent flashed across his eyes. May I know why the few of you have come to the Dragon Alliance? Lu Ming suppressed his anger and asked, Why, haha, do you know that this is the territory of the Cloud Sky Alliance? Without the consent of the Cloud Sky Alliance, you formed an alliance here, cultivated here, and condensed the origin divine crystals here. What crime do you think you have committed? What is your crime? The young man with the tiger mark in the middle of his brows said coldly, "What, Cloud Sky Alliance?" Lu Ming was stunned. It was actually the Cloud Sky Alliance. This was too much of a coincidence. Previously, he had killed 2 people from the Cloud Sky Alliance in the Breeze Mountain. He did not expect to run into the Cloud Sky Alliance's territory as soon as he arrived at the Wind Cloud Mountain. This was fate. No wonder the other party's clothes were so familiar. This is the territory of the Cloud Sky Alliance. How come I don't know? Lu Ming calmed himself down and smiled faintly. Nonsense. The Wind Cloud Mountain is occupied by different forces. This is the territory of the Cloud Sky Alliance. You have trespassed here and refined the primordial divine chi here. This is a crime punishable by death. However, we can give you a chance now. Join the Cloud Sky Alliance and become our slaves. We can spare your lives. The young man with the tiger mark in the middle of his brows said coldly, "I'm sorry. We don't have the habit of becoming other people's slaves. This area belongs to the Dragon Alliance." Cloud Sky Alliance, move aside. Lu Ming waved his hand casually. "What? Kid, what did you say? You are courting death." The young man with the tiger mark in the middle of his brows. He had long sensed that Lu Ming's group of people had low cultivation levels. The strongest among them was only a 7th-tier divine king. They were most likely from a small mountain. This kind of thing often happened. Some small mountains felt that they were strong enough and wanted to develop in the famed mountains. They wanted to occupy a territory in the famed mountains, but in the end they were all wiped out. Otherwise, they would become the slaves of those major powers and be responsible for condensing the primordial divine crystals. What's the point of talking to them? Just kill them. His cultivation was at the peak of the 7th layer of the divine king realm. At the same time, his body swelled up and he turned into a giant beast. It was his primordial divine body. Is it equivalent to the purple-armored ancient god body? Lu Ming muttered. This young man's strength was similar to the 2 young men who had killed their way to Breeze Mountain. He was extremely strong. However, Lu Ming did not feel any pressure at all. Bang! Lu Ming stepped forward and activated the battle character's secret art. His fighting strength increased by 4 times. The overbearing god spear appeared in his hand and he thrust it forward. A giant spear light formed and smashed down on his opponent like a mountain. The giant beast roared and used its primordial secret art to fight back against Lu Ming. A terrifying explosion occurred and a shockwave swept out. The genius of the Cloud Sky Alliance was knocked back and his body trembled. Lu Ming's cultivation had reached the 6th layer of the Divine King realm. He had broken through all 11 types of divine powers, and his fighting strength had increased. He did not need to use his primordial divine body to defeat his opponent. Swoosh! After defeating the other party with 1 move, Lu Ming took another step forward and attacked with the overbearing divine spear. The overbearing god spear struck down with a violent whistling sound. The other white-robed young man's face changed. Apparently, they had not expected Lu Ming to be so strong. How dare you fight back? Let's attack together and kill this kid. The young man with the tiger mark on his forehead roared. His body pounced forward like a wild beast. In the process, his body grew rapidly and he turned into a giant tiger that was 10,000 meters tall. The giant tiger was covered in white scales, and its fangs were protruding. It looked ferocious. When it roared, the entire valley shook. Tianxing and the others were shaken, and they retreated back into the valley. At the same time, the 3rd white-robed young man also used his primordial secret art and charged at Lu Ming. The 3 of them attacked at the same time, and their power was terrifying. Good timing. Lu Ming was not afraid at all. The divine power in his body continued to be activated. Above his head, the gate of domination and the void-shattering sword appeared one after another. All of them shone brightly and charged at the three of them. 3 primordial secret arts. The giant tiger exclaimed and spat out a beam of white light. Its power was terrifying. Wherever it passed, the void exploded and it hit the gate of domination. Clang! The gate of domination shook and the giant tiger's beam of white light was destroyed. The terrifying power forced the giant tiger to retreat. As for the other members of the Cloud Sky Alliance, they were sent flying and crashed into a huge rock, causing cracks to appear on the rock. The rocks here were extremely hard. If they were outside, they would have destroyed the heavens and earth. What a powerful, primordial divine body! Lu Ming's eyes moved. He was shocked by the giant tiger's primordial divine body. The giant tiger's primordial divine body was stronger than the others. It was even stronger than Lu Ming's. Lu Ming estimated that it was equivalent to the middle stage of the purple-armored ancient god body. Therefore, its overall power was above the other two. However, it did not make much of a difference to Lu Ming. 1. The gate of domination buzzed and vibrated. It became bigger and bigger. The suction force from it became stronger and stronger. It continued to suppress the giant tiger. The gate of domination was the first primordial secret art that Lu Ming had comprehended. Moreover, he had comprehended it on his own. Until now, his understanding of the gate of domination had deepened and its power had increased. Boom! The gate of domination collided with the giant tiger for the second time. The giant tiger screamed and one of its claws exploded. It was drenched in blood as it retreated. "We'll help you." The other 2 members of the Yuntian Alliance shouted and were about to rush over. "You should worry about yourselves." Lu Ming said coldly. The Overlord God Spear and the void-shattering sword attacked the 2 of them. Bam! Bam! The 2 of them were defeated and their bodies were sent flying. One of them was pierced by the spear radiance and the other was slashed by the void-shattering sword. He was almost cut in half. This time, the injuries were more serious. Myriad Dao Dragon Emperor Myriad Dao Dragon Emperor. Chapter 3409. The 2 members of the Cloud Sky Alliance were severely injured by Lu Ming. They spat out mouthfuls of blood and couldn't even maintain their primitive divine bodies. Their bodies shrunk and returned to their normal state. Only the giant tiger was left, and he was at a disadvantage. The gate of domination pressed down, and the giant tiger screamed in pain. A large part of his head exploded, and his flesh and bones flew everywhere. The giant tiger screamed in pain as his huge body flew out and hit a huge rock. With a crack, the huge rock shattered, and the sound of bones breaking resounded throughout the area. The giant tiger's body was deformed as he was severely injured. His body shrunk rapidly, and he couldn't maintain his primitive divine body. He returned to his human form. After returning to his human form, his face was pale, and he continued to spit out blood. His aura was extremely weak. Bam! Lu Ming landed in front of the youth with the tiger mark on his forehead and stared at him coldly. The youth shuddered and broke out in cold sweat. "With your cultivation, you want to destroy the Dragon Alliance." A mocking voice was heard. "Don't think that you can be arrogant just because you have some strength. When the experts of the Cloud Sky Alliance come out, you will die without a burial place." The youth with the tiger mark on his forehead shouted. He was still threatening Lu Ming. Bam! Lu Ming kicked the other party's face. Teeth and blood splattered everywhere. The other party's face almost exploded from the kick. "You still dare to threaten me? Do you want to die?" Lu Ming said coldly. The 3 members of the Cloud Sky Alliance didn't dare to speak anymore. Then Lu Ming circulated his divine power and grabbed the storage rings of the 3 members of the Cloud Sky Alliance. He said, "This time I won't kill you. These 3 storage rings will be the interest. Get lost. Go back and tell your Alliance Master that if he's not convinced, he can come and try." After speaking, Lu Ming ignored the 3 members of the Cloud Sky Alliance and left. The three members of the Cloud Sky Alliance were surprised that Lu Ming didn't kill them. They let out a long breath and struggled to get up and leave. Before they left, their eyes flashed with cold light and their killing intent was as sharp as a knife. Alliance Master, if you let them go, the Cloud Sky Alliance will definitely take revenge. Heaven Walker worriedly asked, "Do you think that the Cloud Sky Alliance won't take revenge if you kill them?" Lu Ming smiled faintly. Tianxing was speechless. The upper echelons of the Cloud Sky Alliance must have known that the members of the Cloud Sky Alliance had come. Even if they killed those three people, the Cloud Sky Alliance would still come. It made no difference whether he let it go or not. Moreover, it's just three small fries. They won't be able to affect the overall situation. Who knows? They might even be able to produce primordial divine crystals for us later on. Also, all of you should quickly refine the primordial divine crystals and strive to break through as soon as possible so that you can help me. Aren't you embarrassed that I have to personally take action every single time? Lu Ming said. This, Tianxing, Shui Chu, and the others blushed, their faces burning. Indeed, every time Lu Ming would personally take action, and they could only watch from the sidelines, which made them feel ashamed. Don't worry, Alliance Master. We'll definitely work hard to cultivate and increase our strength so that we can establish ourselves on the famed mountains as soon as possible. Not bad. We will definitely work hard to cultivate. The others spoke one after another, their gazes resolute. All right, go and cultivate. Leave the matter of Yun Tian Alliance to me. Lu Ming nodded his head and said, "Actually, the talents of the Dragon Alliance weren't low. They weren't any weaker than the geniuses of the famed mountains. Perhaps it was because of their age, or because they had entered this world relatively late, causing their cultivation and primordial divine bodies to not be very high. Therefore, their combat strength couldn't compare to the geniuses of the famed mountains. As long as they were given time, and with the primordial divine crystals, their cultivation and strength would quickly increase. This time, I've obtained quite a few primordial divine crystals. These are for you." Lu Ming took out a storage ring that he had just obtained. As expected, there were quite a few primordial divine crystals in it. He gave them all to the Dragon Alliance for them to refine. Anyway, he had enough primordial divine crystals now. He could use them to increase the cultivation of others first, so that he could gain more in the future. Tianxing and the others took the primordial divine crystals and went to refine them happily. As for Lu Ming, he sat cross-legged at the entrance of the valley, waiting for the Cloud Sky Alliance to arrive. As expected, a few days later, many figures rushed over from afar. Not long after, at least a few hundred figures appeared not far away. They formed a fan shape and surrounded the valley where the Dragon Alliance was. They did not hide their cold, murderous intent. "They're here," Lu Ming sneered. He looked around and saw the three young men who had arrived a few days ago. "I spared your lives last time. How dare the three of you come again? Are you courting death?" Lu Ming glanced at the three young men, and his faint voice spread throughout the entire place. "Don't be arrogant. This time, the Alliance Master of the Cloud Sky Alliance and a few Vice Alliance Masters are here. The ones who will die are you." The young man with the tiger mark on his forehead shouted. His eyes were cold. "You're the Alliance Master of the Dragon Alliance." At that moment, a young man stepped out from the Cloud Sky Alliance. The young man was burly and he wore a fiery red armor. What was strange was that he had 6 arms. His eyes were ferocious, and his violent aura pressed down on Lu Ming. Although he had turned into a human, he still had 6 arms. His original form was most likely a terrifying living being. "That's right. It's me. Who are you?" Lu Ming said casually. "Cloud Sky Alliance Master, Nya Quangtian." The young man with 6 arms said, "Oh, it's the Alliance Master of the Cloud Sky Alliance. What brings you here?" "Let me tell you, the Dragon Alliance is poor and can't entertain you." Lu Ming said with a smile. Don't play dumb. I'll give you one last chance. Become a slave of the Cloud Sky Alliance, and I'll spare your lives. Otherwise, you'll die. The Alliance Master of the Cloud Sky Alliance, Niaquangtian, said with killing intent. It's the same nonsense again. There's no point in talking anymore. Hurry up and attack. I'd like to see how powerful you are. Lu Ming spoke, exuding a strong fighting intent. He was telling the truth. He really wanted to see how powerful the Alliance Master of the Cloud Sky Alliance was. He was curious about how powerful a leader who could establish a force in Fengyan Mountain was. Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. The Alliance Master of the Cloud Sky Alliance said coldly with killing intent. Alliance Master, there's no need to kill a chicken with a butcher's knife. You don't have to do it yourself. I'll do it. Another young man stepped out from behind Niaquangtian and said loudly. Niaquangtian's eyes flickered and he said, All right, you'll do it. Don't show any mercy and kill him. As the Alliance Master of the Cloud Sky Alliance, it wasn't appropriate for him to do it himself. He could let others do it to find out how powerful Lu Ming was. Young man, who are you? Lu Ming asked. Shueshang, the Vice Alliance Master of the Cloud Sky Alliance. The young man who walked out from behind replied. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, Shueshang attacked. His body turned into a ray of sword light and pierced through the air towards Lu Ming. Wan Dao Dragon Emperor Wan Dao Dragon Emperor. Chapter 3410. Shueshang's body emitted a resplendent light. His body was like a sword, turning into a ray of sword light that shot towards Lu Ming. The space around him exploded. His speed was unimaginable. Shua! Lu Ming performed the Nine Heavens Kuan Peng technique, and his figure flashed rapidly, wanting to avoid Shueshang's attack. However, he was still a little late. His body was swept by the aftershock of the sword gleam, emitting a sizzling sound and sparks flying in all directions. Then, Lu Ming's body was forcefully torn apart by the sword gleam, leaving behind a sword wound. How sharp! Lu Ming's heart shook. Just now, he had used the Heavenly Devil Golden Body. His body was even harder than a divine weapon. However, he was still cut by the sword light. It showed how powerful his opponent's attack was. Shueshang's sword light flickered and changed direction. He charged towards Lu Ming again. His speed was slightly faster than before. 8th layer Divine King Realm. Shueshang's aura was shockingly powerful. His cultivation base had reached the 8th layer of the Divine King Realm. He was even stronger than the members of the Yuntian Alliance that Lu Ming had fought before. Divine Dragon Dharma Idol. Lu Ming waved his fist. Dragon roars resounded in the air. The Divine Dragon Dharma Idol art was used. 9-clawed dragon appeared and roared towards the sky. They continuously pounced on Shueshang. Boom! 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 The sword light bombarded the 9-clawed dragon. The 9-clawed dragon roared violently. Then, one by one, the 9-clawed dragon was cut in half. Brat, you can't stop me. Shueshang's voice came from the sword light. Is that so? The corners of Lu Ming's lips curled into a cold smile. He then shouted in a low voice, Explode! Immediately, all of the 9-clawed divine dragons exploded. Destructive energy swept out in all directions and bombarded the sword light continuously. Clang! The sword light vibrated and a sword cry resounded in the sky. Then, the sword light retreated and Shueshang's body was revealed. He wasn't injured, but his expression was ugly. You're indeed strong. No wonder you could defeat my Yuntian Alliance's members. However, that was just a warm-up. Now the warm-up is over, said Shueshang. His voice was unusually cold. He didn't hide his cold-killing intent. Warming up? I haven't even started warming up yet. Lu Ming pursed his lips. Shameless boasting. I'll kill you right now. Shueshang shouted coldly. Then his body began to swell. In the next moment, he turned into a white crane. The white crane was gigantic, at least a few hundred meters tall. Its entire body was covered in snow-white feathers, emitting a dazzling white light. At the same time, a bronze battle sword appeared above its head. This was its original secret technique. Clang! The ringing of a sword resounded in all directions as Xueshang once again transformed into a streak of swordlight that shot towards Lu Ming. The sword Qi whistled. This time, its power was 10 times more violent than before. Lu Ming's face turned serious as well. He gripped the void with his hand, and the Tyrant God's spear appeared in his hand. The Tyrant God's spear trembled, and a long river of spear, Dao, surged forward. Boom! The long river of spear, Dao, collided with the opponent's sword light, and a terrifying explosion erupted. The long river of spear Dao was formed from countless tiny spear lights. When they burst forth together, they possessed a destructive power. But at this moment, those spear lights were constantly being broken apart by the sword light. The sword light broke through the river, constantly approaching Lu Ming and attacking Lu Ming. Ruler's Gate, Void Breaker Sword. Next, Lu Ming's heart shook once more. The Ruler's Gate and Void Breaker Sword flew out, emitting a dazzling light. They smashed forward, each bombarding the sword light. Clang! Clang! 2 shocking explosions erupted. Terrifying energy swept out in all directions and landed on the incomparably hard ground, creating craters. Then, the sword light that Xueshang had transformed into was once more sent flying. Die! The white crane that Xueshang had transformed into had a cold gaze. With a long cry, the bronze battle sword merged with him. With a flap of his wings, he once more transformed into a streak of sword light that slashed towards Lu Ming. This time his speed was astonishing. In a flash, the sword light appeared above Lu Ming's head. Many people didn't even see it clearly. However, Lu Ming still caught its trajectory. Clang! The Void Breaker sword seemed to be able to break through the void. It was also astonishingly fast. It appeared above Lu Ming's head first and blocked the opponent's attack. Next, the Ruler's Gate descended from the sky, emitting a terrifying suction force that wanted to bind the opponent. Then, Lu Ming shook the Tyrant God spear and charged upwards, bombarding the sword light. Lu Ming's secret skills of origins complemented each other seamlessly. Clang! The sword light crazily vibrated, and the light on it was almost scattered. With a swoosh, it was sent flying again. This time, Xueshang was injured. A large piece of his neat feathers had fallen off. White feathers fluttered in the air, and blood flowed out of his mouth. So this is your strength? It's not much? Lu Ming's disdainful voice resounded. At that moment, Lu Ming was in the 6th King God realm, while his opponent was only in the 8th King God realm. If he wasn't a terrifying genius, Lu Ming could defeat him easily. He didn't even need to use his ancient god body. Damn it! Xueshang shouted angrily. However, he was astonished. He had used his full strength just now, but he was still suppressed by Lu Ming. He was astonished. Nie Quangtian and the others were also astonished. Today, we're here for a battle between forces, not a personal battle. There's no need to fight him alone. Let's attack together and kill him first, Nie Quangtian said, his eyes shining with cold light. Lu Ming's strength was too terrifying. If he broke through to the 7th King God realm, the Cloud Sky Alliance would have no place to stand. That's right. Let's attack together and kill him, another young man said loudly. Bang! 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 After injuring Nie Quangtian, a total of 3 young men stepped forward. Their powerful aura surged. They formed a triangle with Xueshang and pressed down on Lu Ming. 8th King God realm. All of them were in the 8th King God realm. Among them, Nie Quangtian was the strongest. He was in the peak 8th King God realm. They must be the Alliance Master and the 3 Vice Alliance Masters of the Cloud Sky Alliance. Lu Ming's heart stirred. The Cloud Sky Alliance had 1 Alliance Master and 3 Vice Alliance Masters. They were the 4 strongest people in the Cloud Sky Alliance. Attack! Nia Kuangtian shouted. A violent aura surged from his body. His body swelled, and he turned into a giant ape that was 10,000 meters tall. The giant ape was red and had 6 arms. Its aura was extremely violent. It was the primitive divine body. At the same time, the other 2 Vice Alliance Masters also displayed their primitive divine bodies. They had seen Lu Ming's strength. Therefore, they used their full strength and didn't dare to be careless. At the same time, Xue Shang also attacked. He turned into a dazzling sword light and charged toward Lu Ming. The 4 experts worked together to block Lu Ming's vital points. They wanted to kill Lu Ming with 1 blow. Roar! Lu Ming roared. His body grew rapidly, and he turned into a purple-armored ancient god. Kill! Lu Ming shouted. He held the overbearing god spear in 1 hand and the ruler's gate in the other. He swept the overbearing god spear in all directions. Dragon Emperor Wan Dao Dragon Emperor Wan Dao. Chapter 34:11. Boom! Boom! Lu Ming blocked the attacks of Nie Kuangtian and the rest in such a barbaric way. For consecutive booms rang out as a huge explosion occurred in this region. Terrifying energy blasted into the ground, creating huge craters and sending rubble flying everywhere. Whoosh! Whoosh! Nie Kuangtian and the other 3 retreated hastily. They retreated a few thousand meters, but so did Lu Ming. He felt them all over. They are indeed powerful. No wonder they are the strongest 4 in the Cloud Sky Alliance. Lu Ming exclaimed in his heart. Lu Ming did not gain the upper hand in the face of the 4 experts of the Cloud Sky Alliance, even with his purple-armored ancient god body. The main reason was that his opponent's primitive divine bodies were too advanced. Lu Ming's purple-armored ancient god body was equivalent to the early stage of purple-armored ancient god body. The 4 experts' primitive divine bodies were all stronger than Lu Ming's. In terms of ancient god body, the weakest one had reached the middle stage of purple-armored ancient god body. Nie Kuangtian, especially, was probably equivalent to the late stage of purple-armored ancient god body. His strength was shocking. This was normal. He had been cultivating in Fengyun Mountain for many years and had refined many primitive divine crystals. It was normal for his primitive divine body to be stronger than Lu Ming's. We must get rid of this kid. Kill! Nie Kuangtian and the other 3 retreated. They then roared and attacked Lu Ming. Everyone used their trump cards. All kinds of terrifying attacks blasted toward Lu Ming from all directions. Lu Ming did not dare to be careless. He focused on the attacks. A bright moon and a sun appeared above his head. In addition, there was also the primordial divine dragon horn. Lu Ming used the 6 secret skills of origin to fight the 4 experts of the Cloud Sky Alliance. Both of them had turned into their primitive divine bodies. Although their bodies were huge, their speed was astonishingly fast. Strong winds were blowing in this area. Their bodies kept flashing and colliding with each other. In the blink of an eye, both of them had exchanged dozens of moves. The subordinates of the Cloud Sky Alliance retreated again and again. It was difficult for them to gain a foothold nearby. How can this kid be so strong? The young man with the tiger-shaped mark between his eyebrows, who had come to make trouble last time, was horrified. Lu Ming's strength was beyond his imagination. It was too terrifying. He could actually fight the 4 strongest people of the Cloud Sky Alliance to such an extent. What if Lu Ming wanted to kill him last time? Thinking about it, he felt a wave of lingering fear. In the distance, there were some other people hiding in the dark. These people were experts from other forces in Fengyun Mountain. This time, the Cloud Sky Alliance had mobilized all its forces, which naturally alerted the other forces. These forces naturally sent experts to investigate. What's the background of the Dragon League? Their hegemon is so strong. He only has the strength of the 6th king god layer, but he can fight against 4 strong cultivators of the Cloud Sky Union alone. I don't know. I've never heard of it before. It's probably from a small mountain. It's possible that some terrifying geniuses will accumulate strength on the small mountains. When their wings are fully grown, they will slaughter their way to the famed mountains. These people discussed secretly as they stared at the battlefield without blinking. They wanted to see who would win in the end. Awesome. Awesome. Ha ha ha. The more Lu Ming fought, the happier he felt. In the past few years, his cultivation had broken through the 6th king god layer, and his ancient god body had reached the purple armor ancient god body. However, he hadn't fought with his full strength yet. At this moment, he felt extremely satisfied. However, Nia Kuangtian and the others were astonished. They had cultivated here for many years. Their ancient god bodies had reached an astonishing level. Together with other secret techniques, such as the origin secret techniques, their fighting strength was extremely strong. In the outside world, they were almost invincible existences at the same level. However, at this moment, even though their cultivation was 2 levels higher than Lu Ming's, the 4 of them couldn't defeat Lu Ming. In the blink of an eye, they had exchanged more than 10 moves. It's about time to send them on their way. A cold light flashed in Lu Ming's eyes. His aura suddenly surged. The battle character's secret art increased his fighting strength by 5 times. Previously, he hadn't activated the battle character's secret art. Now he had. After activating the battle character's secret art, Lu Ming's strength was above Nia Kuangtian and the other 3. Boom! 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 After 4 consecutive explosions, Nia Kuangtian and the other 3 grunted and were pushed back. You still have strength left? Nia Kuangtian and the other 3 were shocked. I'll send you on your way. Lu Ming shouted coldly. The 6 origin secret techniques were pushed to the extreme. Divine power poured into the secret techniques as they shone brightly and shot toward Nia Kuangtian and the other 3. Block it! Nia Kuangtian and the other 3 shouted and tried their best to block it. However, they didn't notice that the overbearing god spear in Lu Ming's hand was covered in lightning. Lu Ming not only used the battle character secret art to increase his fighting strength by 5 times, but he also secretly borrowed Qiuqiu's power. Since the 4 of them were attacking him, why couldn't he borrow Qiuqiu's power? While the other origin secret techniques attacked Nia Kuangtian and the other 2, the overbearing god spear collided with Xueshang's sword light. Xueshang was already injured by Lu Ming and his strength was somewhat damaged. Now that Lu Ming had activated the battle character secret art and borrowed Qiuqiu's power, Xueshang couldn't resist at all. Boom! Xueshang's sword light collapsed. At the same time, Qiuqiu's lightning made his body stiffen. Kill! Lu Ming shouted coldly. The Overlord Divine's spear pierced mercilessly. With a puffed sound, it directly pierced through Xueshang's head. Xueshang didn't even have time to scream before he was killed by Lu Ming. His huge body fell to the ground and quickly reverted to its original form. All of this happened in a flash. Nia Kuangtian and the other 2 had just resisted Lu Ming's other origin secret techniques and were forced to retreat. Before they could react, Xueshang had been killed. However, Lu Ming had already moved. After killing Xueshang, he didn't stop and attacked another deputy leader of the Yuntian Alliance. This move also borrowed Qiuqiu's power. The Vice Alliance master screamed miserably, his body retreating explosively. Half of his body exploded, seriously injured. Then, the Gate of Domination came down and crushed his body into pieces. He died on the spot. In an instant, Lu Ming had killed 2 deputy leaders of the Yuntian Alliance. Nia Kuangtian and the others finally realized what had happened and were almost scared to death. At this moment, Lu Ming's strength was far above theirs. Attack! Everyone, attack together and kill this man! Nie Quangtian shouted. He wanted to summon all the members of the Yuntian alliance to attack together and kill Lu Ming. Whoever dares to attack will die. Lu Ming shouted coldly. His killing intent was like a tide. The members of the Yuntian alliance felt a chill in their hearts. Their eyes flickered, but no one attacked. These people came from different races in the primitive universe. They were all geniuses. How could they really submit to others? Previously, they had joined the Yuntian alliance to seek protection so that they could establish themselves in Fengyan Mountain. In return, they had to hand over a large number of origin divine crystals. They had no loyalty to Nie Quangtian and the others. Dragon Emperor Wan Dao Dragon Emperor Wan Dao. Chapter 34:12. To put it bluntly, the members of Yuntian Alliance and Nie Quangtian were just partners. Nie Quangtian and the others had powerful combat strength. They would protect them and hand over the primordial divine crystals. Once they left this world, they would not care about each other. There was no loyalty. Usually they would fight and kill each other. Now that they had encountered a terrifying existence like Lu Ming, they would probably be killed if they went up. Why would they go up? Naturally, no one would go up. Damn it, damn it, Nie Quangtian roared in anger. At this moment, Lu Ming had already controlled all of his origin secret skills to attack them. Lu Ming held the Overlord Spear in his hand. The spear radiance was like a mountain as it smashed towards the last vice leader. The vice leader could not block it at all and was severely injured. Then, the void-shattering sword flew past and chopped off his head. The 3 vice leaders of Yuntian Alliance were all dead. Nie Quangtian roared in fear. He used all of his strength to block Lu Ming's origin secret skills. Then he turned around and tried to escape. However, a bolt of lightning flashed by. It was too fast and landed on Nie Quangtian. Nie Quangtian's body went numb and he could not help but stiffen. Boom! The gate of domination became tens of thousands of feet tall and smashed towards Nie Quangtian's head. If that hit, Nie Quangtian would definitely die. Roar! Nie Quangtian let out a terrifying roar. The fiery red light around his body skyrocketed. At the critical moment, he moved. His 6 arms suddenly waved and bombarded the Dominator's Gate with attacks, blocking the Dominator's Gate. The Origin Divine Body is equivalent to the later stage of the purple-armored ancient god body. It is indeed extraordinary. He can still move after being hit by lightning. Lu Ming also exclaimed. However, he did not slow down. He stepped forward and appeared not far from Nie Quangtian. He held the Gate of Domination in his left hand and the Overlord Spear in his right hand. He swung the spear and smashed it towards Nie Quangtian's head. Lu Ming had activated the battle incantation to increase his combat strength by 5 times. In addition to the 11 types of divine powers, 7 of which were third awakened, and the purple-armored ancient god body, his strength was too strong. In addition, he also attacked Nie Quangtian with other origin secret skills. Ah! Nie Quangtian roared. His eyes were bloodshot. He was going all out. His 6 arms were holding 5 different divine artifacts. One of his arms was holding his origin secret technique. Its 6 arms waved desperately to block Lu Ming's attacks. In the blink of an eye, the 2 of them had exchanged more than a dozen moves. Kacha! Crack! Cracks appeared on the divine weapons in Nie Quangtian's hands. Then they all exploded. Only the origin secret technique remained. Nie Quangtian was pushed back by the power of Ili, and blood gushed out of his mouth in the air. Kill! Lu Ming did not borrow Qiuqiu's strength. He wanted to kill Nie Quangtian with his own strength. Boom! The Gate of Domination collided with one of Nie Quangtian's arms. Nie Quangtian's arm exploded, blood and flesh splattering everywhere. Pucci! The void-breaking sword flashed and cut off Nyakwangtian's other arm. In addition, the moon of the moon and the sun of the sun were shedding horrifying rays of light. Nyakwangtian's body seemed to be burning and turning into ashes. "Ah, if you want to die, let's die together," Nyakwangtian roared. His body emitted a dazzling blood-red light. He wanted to burn himself completely and take Lu Ming down with him. However, Lu Ming used his yin-yang godai. Many yin and yang talismans appeared and wrapped around Nyakwangtian tightly, preventing him from exploding. Then, the Overlord God Spear, the Gate of Domination, the Void-Breaking Sword, the Immemorial Divine Dragon Horn, all of them bombarded Nyakwangtian. This time, Nyakwangtian could not resist. He screamed as his body exploded under the attacks. He died on the spot. Since then, the 4 leaders of the Yuntian Alliance had been killed by Lu Ming. Lu Ming's eyes were like lightning. He glanced at the other members of the Yuntian Alliance and said, "The 4 leaders of the Yuntian Alliance are all dead. Who else wants to fight?" The members of the Yuntian Alliance turned pale. How could they dare to fight when the 4 leaders were dead? Most of the members of the Yuntian Alliance were in the 7th or 6th layer of the King God realm. They were no match for Lu Ming. They would be courting death if they went up. No, no, no. They quickly shook their heads. Among them, the young man with the tiger mark between his eyebrows was the most frightened. His face was as pale as snow. Last time, he had threatened Lu Ming that he would kill Lu Ming. Now that his backer was dead, how would Lu Ming deal with him? As expected, Lu Ming looked at him and said, "What about you? Didn't you want to kill me?" The young man with the tiger mark between his eyebrows almost fell to the ground. He struggled to maintain his balance and said, "I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare. Last time I spoke carelessly. The leader is powerful. I'm willing to join the Dragon Alliance and work for him." "Oh, you're willing to join the Dragon Alliance?" Lu Ming asked. "Yes, I'm willing." The young man with the tiger mark between his eyebrows quickly said, "You can join the Dragon Alliance too." Lu Ming nodded. He looked at the other members of the Yuntian Alliance and said, "What about you? What are you waiting for? Why aren't you joining the Dragon Alliance?" Nyakwangtian and the other 3 were killed. In the future, the territory of the Yuntian Alliance will belong to the Dragon Alliance. If you don't join the Dragon Alliance, you won't be able to establish yourself in this territory. Do you understand? The young man with the tiger mark between his eyebrows immediately shouted. He immediately treated himself as a member of the Dragon Alliance. Lu Ming smiled faintly and didn't stop him. "I'm willing to join the Dragon Alliance." "Me too." Immediately, many members of the Yuntian Alliance joined the Dragon Alliance. To them, it was the same whether they joined the Yuntian Alliance or the Dragon Alliance. As long as they were protected and had a place to cultivate and condense the original divine crystals, it was fine. In the end, almost all the members of the Yuntian Alliance were willing to join the Dragon Alliance. There were more than 200 of them. Lu Ming was overjoyed. With so many people helping him condense the original divine crystals, it felt great. Although he couldn't refine all of them now, he could take them out and slowly refine them in the future. Plus, he had family and friends. If he sold them, they would be priceless. Countless people would fight over them, especially those who cultivated the original divine body. "How did you hand them in before? What's the ratio of original divine crystals?" Lu Ming asked the young man with the tiger mark between his eyebrows. His name was Lu Nong. "We used to hand in 10 original divine crystals. We handed in 9 and kept 1 for ourselves." Lu Nong answered honestly. 9 out of 10. Lu Ming nodded. This ratio was considered good in the famed mountains. Many forces had to hand in 19 out of 20. Actually, many small forces had a good ratio. That was the only way to attract people to join them. If a small force and a large force handed in the same ratio, others would definitely join the large force. Chapter 3413. The ratio of primordial divine crystals submitted by the Dragon Alliance is different from that of Yuntian Alliance. Lu Ming said, different? Many people's hearts sank as their eyes flickered. Could it be that the ratio of Dragon Alliance's primordial divine crystals was worse, and they had to submit 19 out of 20? If that was the case, many people started to consider if they should find an opportunity to leave the Dragon Alliance and join other forces. They looked at Lu Ming and waited for Lu Ming's answer. Lu Ming slowly extended 3 fingers. Could it be that only 1 out of 30 can be kept? That ratio is too low. Why don't we go to those small mountains? Many people were shocked. In an instant, many thoughts flashed through their minds. Some people decided to find an opportunity to leave Fengyan Mountain and go to those small mountains. With their cultivation, it wouldn't be difficult for them to become a mountain master if they went to those small mountains. Although the speed of condensing primordial divine crystals in those small mountains was too slow, if they could become a mountain master, they would be able to command dozens of subordinates and earn a decent income. After all, it was better than keeping 1 out of 30. At that moment, Lu Ming spoke. His voice rang in everyone's ears. 30%. You can keep 30% of the primordial divine crystals that you condense. Lu Ming smiled faintly. What? 30%? Did I hear wrongly? Everyone from Yuntian Alliance was stunned as they looked at Lu Ming with their mouths agape. 30%? Lu Ming actually said that they could keep 30%? 30% meant that they could keep 3 out of every 10 primordial divine crystals if they handed in 7 out of 10. This ratio was 3 times higher than what Yuntian Alliance had previously given. This ratio was unique in the famed mountains. Yuntian Alliance had given them 1 out of 10 primordial divine crystals, and that was already the best treatment. Some of the bigger forces would keep 1 out of 20, or even 1 out of 30 primordial divine crystals. On the other hand, Lu Ming gave them a 30% ratio. Alliance leader, is this true? Someone asked in disbelief. Of course it's true. Why? Don't you want it? Lu Ming said indifferently. He had given 50% to the people who had come with him from Mount Breeze. However, he naturally wouldn't give 50% to these people. That was too much. 30% was enough. Thank you, Alliance Master. The others were overjoyed, and they all bowed to Lu Ming to express their gratitude. All right, do you have a map? Take over the Cloud Sky Alliance's territory. Also, tell me about the current distribution of forces in the Wind Cloud Mountain. Lu Ming immediately started to make arrangements. At the same time, he also understood the distribution of forces in empty Fengyan. In Fengyan Mountain, there were a total of dozens of forces of varying sizes. They were divided into 4 regions. Lu Ming and the others were currently in the Eastern region. In the Eastern region, there were more than 10 forces of various sizes. The original Cloud Sky Alliance was only one of the weaker forces. After taking over the Cloud Sky Alliance's territory and making the necessary arrangements, Lu Ming did not attack the other forces. As for the other forces, after seeing that Lu Ming had only taken over the Cloud Sky Alliance's territory, they did not attack Lu Ming and the others. For the time being, everything was peaceful. After making all the arrangements, Lu Ming continued to cultivate in seclusion. Now that he had more and more Origin Divine Crystals, he would receive a large number of Origin Divine Crystals every once in a while. He couldn't use them all, so he naturally had to seize the time to refine them. Lu Ming took out a piece of Origin Divine Crystal and started to refine it. Time flew by, month after month, year after year. In the blink of an eye, 20 years had passed since Lu Ming had arrived at Fengyan Mountain. In 20 years, Lu Ming had refined more than 1,000 pieces of Origin Divine Crystals. After refining so many Origin Divine Crystals, Lu Ming had made great progress in all aspects. First, it was the purple-armored ancient god body. Lu Ming had broken through to the intermediate purple-armored ancient god body. In terms of cultivation, He had also reached the peak of the sixth divine king realm. Moreover, after cultivating in such an environment, Lu Ming had another breakthrough in one of his origin divine power factors and had completed the third awakening. In this way, he had a total of 8 origin divine power factors and had completed the third awakening. It was worth mentioning that over the years, especially in recent years, more and more people had sought refuge with Lu Ming and joined the Dragon League. The main reason was that he could keep 30% of the primordial divine crystals in the Dragon Alliance. That was too tempting. The news had already spread and reached the ears of the other forces in the Fengyun Mountain. It was especially so for the other forces in the eastern region. When the supreme talents of these forces heard about it, many of them sought refuge with Lu Ming. Now, the number of people in the Dragon League had increased to more than 400. Every year, Lu Ming would receive close to 3,000 pieces of primordial divine crystals. However, this had caused dissatisfaction among the leaders of the other forces. Especially in the eastern region, the number of people seeking refuge with Lu Ming was the highest. This had alerted the leaders of the other forces. The Sky Heart Alliance and the Soldier Peak Alliance were the 2 largest forces in the Fengyun Mountain East region. This time, the leader of the Sky Heart Alliance had invited the leaders of the other forces to gather at the Sky Heart Alliance to discuss some matters. A total of 10 leaders of the forces had gathered at the Sky Heart Alliance. Everyone, I believe you know that we have gathered here because of the Dragon League. What do you think we should do? The leader of the Sky Heart Alliance went straight to the point. What should we do? It's simple. The Dragon League has violated the rules and allowed people to keep 30% of the origin divine crystals. They have attracted our people to the Dragon League. This is unfair competition, and it should not exist. The leader of the Soldier Peak Alliance said coldly, "That's right. The Dragon League has broken the balance and seriously violated the rules. They have disrupted the market, and they should not exist. Such a malignant tumor should be removed." The leaders of the other forces chimed in. These people were the strongest in the Fengyun Mountain East region. With just a few sentences, they had decided the fate of Lu Ming and the rest. In that case, go back and gather your men. We will head to the Dragon League and ask the leader of the Dragon League to get out of Fengyun Mountain. The leader of the Sky Heart Alliance said, "What if he doesn't get out?" The leader of the Soldier Peak Alliance said, "Then we will kill him." The leader of the Sky Heart Alliance said coldly. After that, the leaders of the various forces returned to their respective bases. They led their troops and charged toward the Dragon League. As for Lu Ming, he was cultivating in seclusion. All of a sudden, someone dashed toward his place of seclusion. Lu Ming immediately sensed it and ended his cultivation. He frowned slightly. He had instructed them not to disturb him when he was cultivating in seclusion unless there was something serious. At that moment, someone rushed over. In the next instant, a young man appeared not far away, and he looked panicked. "What's going on?" Lu Ming asked in a deep voice. "Alliance leader, bad news. The Sky Heart Alliance and the Soldier Peak Alliance have led the other 8 forces, and they are charging toward us." The young man quickly reported with a pale face. Chapter 34:14 Sky Heart Alliance and Soldier Peak Alliance. Lu Ming muttered. He naturally knew about the 2 strongest forces in the Fengyun East region. "I didn't expect them to come earlier than I expected. Let's go out and take a look." Lu Ming stood up and walked out. Soon, he arrived at the entrance of the valley. Everyone from the Dragon Alliance was gathered at the entrance of the valley. They looked outside with pale faces. That was because they were surrounded outside. As far as the eye could see, there were at least a few thousand people in the area. With a single glance, one could tell that these people were divided into 10 different groups and 10 different powers. "Why have you come to the Dragon Alliance?" Lu Ming stepped out and came to the front, asking in a deep voice, "You are the leader of the Dragon Alliance, Lu Ming?" A tall and sturdy young man with eyes as sharp as a blade stepped out and asked coldly. He exuded a terrifying aura. It was so sharp that it seemed like it could pierce through the sky. That's right. I am Lu Ming. Who are you? Lu Ming asked. I am the leader of the Soldier Peak Alliance, Bing Tong. The burly young man said coldly. So you are the leader of the Soldier Peak Alliance. Tell me, why have you come here? Lu Ming asked again. Simple. Lu Ming, disband the Dragon Alliance now, and get out of Fengyan Mountain. Bing Tong said coldly. What? The members of the Dragon Alliance were shocked. To them, the Dragon Alliance was a sacred place for cultivation. They had to hand in the least amount of resources. Here, they could get enough resources to cultivate. The other party had asked Lu Ming to disband the Dragon Alliance. Once the Dragon Alliance was disbanded, they would only have two options. One was to leave with them, and the other was to join another force. However, they would not be treated as well as the Dragon Alliance. Hee. Lu Ming laughed coldly after hearing what Bing Tong said. What are you laughing at? Bing Tong said coldly. I'm laughing at how ridiculous you are. What did the Dragon Alliance do wrong? Why did the 10 forces gather and disband the Dragon Alliance? Lu Ming asked. Do you still not understand? Lu Ming, the rule you set for people to only hand over 70% of their primordial divine crystals has already broken the rules and disturbed the market. That's why the Dragon Alliance shouldn't exist. Bing Tong said, I see. Lu Ming understood that the other party was doing this because of the ratio set by the Dragon Alliance. The Dragon Alliance's profit ratio was too attractive, and it continuously attracted people from other factions to join. Thus, these people could not sit still. Rules? Who set the rules? This ratio can be set at will. You can also set it higher. No one is stopping you. Lu Ming said indifferently. To put it bluntly, these people were reluctant to give up their own interests. In this world, strength was everything. Collecting primeval divine crystals was a business that had no cost in the first place. Collecting more or less was a profit. It was just that these people were too greedy and wanted to earn more. Looks like you're being stubborn. Bing Tong's eyes were extremely cold. What's the point of talking nonsense with him? We've already given him a chance to live, but he doesn't know how to cherish it. Let's just kill him. A voice filled with killing intent sounded from behind Bing Tong. Following that, a figure charged out at an extremely fast speed and charged towards Lu Ming. He had yet to reach Lu Ming, but the violent force was already like a violent storm, pressing toward Lu Ming. 9th Layer God King Realm. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed slightly. The person who attacked was a 9th Layer God King Realm cultivator. He was also the leader of a faction. However, this person's cultivation was stronger than the Alliance Master of the Cloud Sky Alliance. Boom! A palm print pressed down on Lu Ming with earth-shattering force. It was going to smash Lu Ming into a pulp. Alliance Master, be careful! Tianxing, Shui Chu, and the others exclaimed. Boom! Facing such an attack, Lu Ming did not dare to be careless. He instantly activated the battle character art and quadrupled his combat strength. He circulated all 11 types of divine force and the heavenly demon golden body at the same time and punched out. Boom! Lu Ming's fist collided with the palm print and there was a loud explosion. The mountain shook and the palm print was destroyed. The figure flew back while Lu Ming's body shook and he took a few steps back. What a powerful force! Lu Ming's eyes narrowed slightly. A 9th Layer God King Realm cultivator who was known as a Peak Divine King was indeed extraordinary. To be able to become the leader of a faction, his talent was naturally top-notch and his combat strength was shocking. You're pretty good to be able to take one of my palms. Let's see how many of them you can take. A domineering voice sounded, and the figure charged towards Lu Ming. Golden light shone from his palms, and a golden brick appeared on each of his palms. Yes, the golden brick exuded an ancient aura. It was the origin source secret technique of the person. After using the origin source secret technique, the person's combat strength increased tremendously. His palm energy was as thick as a mountain, and it pressed down on Lu Ming. Bing Tong and the rest looked on indifferently, and they had no intention of taking any action. Use your full strength. Otherwise, it's not enough. Lu Ming shouted. His body swelled and turned into the purple armor ancient god body. At the same time, rays of light shot out from his body. They were all origin, source, secret techniques. Overbearing deity spear and overlord's gate. These origin source secret techniques appeared, and under Lu Ming's control, they smashed down on the opponent. Boom! 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 After a series of collisions, the opponent's palm print was destroyed, and he flew back with a ghastly expression. Then the person roared and used his origin source body. He became 10,000 meters tall and charged towards Lu Ming. The two of them fought with all their might. After a series of collisions, Lu Ming was at a disadvantage and he was at a disadvantage. In the end, Lu Ming activated the fight incantation and increased his combat strength by 5 times. However, he was still at a disadvantage. Although it would not be easy for the person to kill him, Lu Ming was still at a disadvantage. The person was powerful. If they were at the same level, he would not be weaker than the Alliance Master of Yuntian Alliance. In addition, the person's cultivation was 1 level higher than the Alliance Master of Yuntian Alliance. His overall combat strength was much stronger than the Alliance Master of Yuntian Alliance. Although Lu Ming could kill the Alliance Master of Yuntian Alliance, he was still no match for the person. These people were not ordinary cultivators. They were all top geniuses. Lu Ming could feel that the person's origin source body was much stronger than his. In terms of ancient god body, the person's origin source body was at the peak of the purple armor ancient god body. When it was unleashed, its combat strength was terrifying. How dare you break the rules with your strength? Die! Die! The person roared, and his attacks became more violent. The golden brick in his hand floated up and down. If they were outside, he could blow up a planet. Looks like I have to borrow Chocho's power, Lu Ming thought. Then the bracelet on his wrist that was transformed by Chocho shot out lightning through the overbearing god spear. Boom! Chapter 34:15. I'll give you one more chance. Retreat now, otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Lu Ming's cold voice reverberated through the area. Everyone was shocked. They were shocked by Lu Ming's strength and talent. 6 origin source secret techniques that were 3 levels higher than the other peerless geniuses. Every single one of them was enough to shock the world. How arrogant! Let's see how merciless you are. With a loud shout, another figure dashed out and charged toward Lu Ming. This was the leader of another force, also a 9th layer God King realm cultivator. At the same time, the first person also moved. The 2 experts besieged Lu Ming. Bring it on then. Lu Ming's eyes were cold. Chocho wriggled rapidly, turning into a suit of armor that covered Lu Ming's body. Sizzle! Boundless lightning swam around Lu Ming's body, making him look like a god of lightning. Kill! Lu Ming shouted as he charged towards the 2 experts. All kinds of origin source secret techniques were unleashed. Lu Ming ignored his own defense and attacked with all his might. Boom! A golden palm landed on Lu Ming's chest. However, Lu Ming only trembled slightly, as if nothing had happened. He grabbed the gate of domination with his left hand and slammed it towards his opponent. Bang! The first person who attacked was directly hit by the gate of domination. He groaned as his body was sent flying. He spat out a mouthful of blood and was almost flattened. If it weren't for his profound cultivation, he would have been heavily injured by this move. Even so, his injuries were not light. At the same time, the tyrant god's spear was filled with thousands of lightning bolts, striking the second person who attacked. His body went numb, and he quickly retreated. After being hit by Lu Ming's other origin source secret techniques, he coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. Lu Ming and Qiu joined forces, and their battle prowess increased sharply. In an instant, they injured the two experts. Kill! After Lu Ming repelled his opponents, he didn't give them a chance to catch their breaths. He continued to attack. Every move was filled with thousands of lightning bolts. Coupled with his own origin source secret techniques, his attacks were incomparably violent. The two great experts roared and did everything they could to resist. However, they were still not a match and were continuously forced back. After barely withstanding more than 10 moves, the two of them were struck by Lu Ming again. They screamed miserably and retreated, their injuries even more serious. This person is stubborn. Let's attack together and kill him. One of them roared. Then I'll kill you first. Lu Ming said coldly. Before he finished speaking, he had already pounced towards the person who had spoken. The lightning in the sky turned into 7 lightning swords and slashed down. This person continuously struck out with both of his palms. Tens of thousands of rays of golden light were shot out, resisting the lightning swords. However, Lu Ming's other attacks quickly followed. Gate of domination, sword of void, cleaving boom boom, boom-a, terrifying explosion erupted. Under the continuous bombardment, this person simply couldn't withstand it. The golden palm print collapsed, and cracks appeared on the 2 golden bricks in his hands. Finally, with a bang, they exploded. With his source secret technique broken, this person coughed up large mouthfuls of blood, suffering heavy injuries. Kill! In the end, the tyrannical god's spear pierced through this person's forehead. The heavens want me dead! This person roared in his heart, full of indignation. Just as the tyrannical god's spear was about to pierce through this person's head, a sharp saber light suddenly appeared and slashed at the tip of the tyrannical god spear. Suddenly, an incomparably sharp energy burst out, causing the tyrannical god spear to vibrate violently. Lu Ming felt a terrifying energy coming from the tyrannical god spear, causing him to almost lose his grip on the spear. His body was pushed back by this energy. Then he saw a figure land in front of the previous person. Bing Tong, 4th awakening. Lu Ming's gaze turned serious. The person who suddenly attacked was the alliance leader of the soldier Peak, Bing Tong. Moreover, as soon as they exchanged blows, Lu Ming could feel that his opponent's divine power was ancient and powerful. It was extremely condensed and powerful. This feeling was very similar to what the barbarian race's genius, Man Ku, felt. This was the feeling brought about by the 4th awakening of the origin source divine power factor. The origin source divine power factor has actually been awakened 4 times. No wonder the Soldier Peak Alliance can become one of the 2 strongest forces in the Fengyun East region. A thought flashed through Lu Ming's mind. The 4th awakening of the origin source divine power factor was no small matter. In fact, every awakening of the origin source divine power factor was no small matter. It was extremely difficult, and the further one went, the more difficult it would be. In fact, the 3rd awakening of the origin source divine power factor meant that one had the qualifications to break through to the Sir God level. Moreover, after the 3rd awakening, there was no requirement for the origin source divine power factor in the Sir God realm, and one could continue to break through. Many overlords who stood at the peak of the Sir God level might only have the 3rd awakening of the origin source divine power factor. It was extremely difficult to awaken 4 times. Once awakened, the divine power would undergo a transformation and become closer to the origin source divine power. Its power would also become more terrifying. Among the younger generation, Bing Tong was the 2nd person that Lu Ming had met to awaken 4 times. The first person was man, Ku from the barbarian race. Metallic life forms? Then let me destroy all of you. Bing Tong said coldly. Swoosh! At that moment, a figure flashed and appeared beside Bing Tong. That person was the Alliance Master of the Sky Heart Alliance, Lu Tianxin. There is no need to fight one-on-one in a battle between forces. Let's work together and get rid of this person. Lu Tianxin said coldly. Bing Tong's eyes flickered, and then he nodded. They felt great pressure from Lu Ming. Lu Ming was only in the 6th level of the Divine King realm, and his fighting strength was already so terrifying. If he continued to break through, he would definitely surpass them. By then, would there be any place for them in the eastern part of Fengyu Mountain? Therefore, the two of them came to an agreement to get rid of Lu Ming before Lu Ming rose to power. This was to protect their interests. In this world, Sir Gods were not allowed to stay. Once someone broke through to the Sir God realm, they would be forced to leave. Therefore, they would not stay for too long. Naturally, they had to use this time to plunder as many origin divine crystals as possible. However, once they lost their position as Alliance Master and were ruled by others, how could they plunder the origin divine crystals? Therefore, Lu Ming could not be allowed to live. Do you want to work together? Come on, let me see how strong the two strongest divine powers of the Fengyu Mountain East Division are. Lu Ming laughed, and his fighting spirit was strong. If you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. Bing Tong said coldly. The next moment, he unleashed his primordial divine body. His primordial divine body was actually a gigantic centipede. The centipede's sharp claws were like peerlessly sharp divine sabers as it slashed toward Lu Ming. At the same time, the Alliance Master of the Sky Heart Alliance, Lu Tianxin, also moved. He also used his primitive divine body and charged at Lu Ming. Without a doubt, Lu Tianxin's origin divine power factor had also awakened 4 times. Otherwise, he would not be as famous as Bing Tong. Chapter 34:16. Both Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin attacked at the same time. Everyone backed away from the battlefield, fearing that they would be caught up in it. At the same time, their eyes were fixed on the battlefield. They wanted to see how Lu Ming would deal with the 2 top experts. Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin were undoubtedly the 2 strongest people in the Fengyu East Division. They were not comparable to the other 2 leaders. Yin Yang Gadai, Gate of Domination. Void-shattering sword, Lu Ming shouted in a low voice. All kinds of secret skills were cast at once. Since he had stored a large amount of divine power in his quantifying word formula, he was not afraid of using them. In the next moment, the 2 sides collided at an astonishing speed. In a breath's time, they had exchanged more than 100 blows. Swoosh! In the end, Lu Ming's body was pushed back and he crashed into a few boulders. He was forced into a disadvantageous position. Their divine bodies, Lu Ming's eyes turned serious. He felt that Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin's origin divine power factor had not only awakened 4 times. Their primordial divine bodies were not to be underestimated. Compared to the ancient divine body, they were definitely at the peak of the purple-armored ancient divine body. In fact, it felt like they were about to reach another level. Their combined combat strength was extremely powerful. With Lu Ming's current cultivation, he was no match for them. Even with Qiuqiu's help, it would be difficult to fight them. Kill! Bing Tong shouted as he turned into a giant centipede and pounced on Lu Ming. Each of his legs was a sharp divine knife. Some of his legs even flew out and turned into divine knives that slashed at Lu Ming. These divine knives contained the divine power of 4 awakenings and were indestructible. The bolts of lightning that Qiuqiu shot out were difficult to block, and they were shattered by the constant collisions. Clang, clang, clang. The blade slashed at the Gate of Domination, causing it to shake violently. In the blink of an eye, the Gate of Domination had been slashed a few 100 times. Crack! Cracks began to appear on the surface of the Door of Sovereigns. Lu Ming's cultivation base was 3 levels lower than his opponent's, which meant that his essence secret magic was weaker than his opponent's. His Sovereign's Gate was on the verge of being destroyed. On the other side, Lu Tianxin's attacks were just as powerful as Soldier Eye's. He used his Origin's secret technique and continuously attacked the moon and the sun. The sun and the moon shook violently and rays of light filled the sky. Bang! Bang! Almost at the same time, the gate of the Sovereign, the moon of the Great Yin, and the sun of the Great Yang all exploded, destroyed. Lu Ming suffered a backlash. He spat out blood and retreated, his face pale. Lu Ming is going to lose. Many people's eyes flickered, thinking that Lu Ming was about to lose. As for the people from the Dragon Alliance, they looked worried, although they didn't have any feelings for Lu Ming. If Lu Ming was defeated, they wouldn't be treated like this in the future. Lu Ming, your good days are coming to an end. Soldier, I shouted. After destroying the Gate of Domination, he took the opportunity to attack. Hundreds of divine blades danced in the sky and slashed at Lu Ming. Lu Ming waved the Overlord God Spear to block, shooting out spear lights. However, when the spear lights hit the divine blades, they were all destroyed. Clang! 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 The Overlord God Spear and the divine blades collided, causing a violent tremor. Lu Ming was pushed back by the terrifying power. Moreover, Lu Ming couldn't block some of the divine blades. They slashed at Lu Ming's body. Clang! Clang! Sparks flew everywhere. Fortunately, Qiuqiu's armor was extremely tough. It blocked the attacks in the end, leaving only a few marks. However, the terrifying power of the divine blades blasted into Lu Ming's body, causing Lu Ming's bones to tremble and almost break. At the same time, Lu Tianxin's attack landed. Lu Ming was completely at a disadvantage. What's the use of relying on a metallic life form? Watch me break through your defense. Soldier, I shouted. Is that so? Lu Ming's eyes flashed with a cold light. Then he whispered, Withdraw! At this time, Lu Ming actually withdrew the remaining Origin Source secret techniques. Everyone was stunned. At this critical moment, Lu Ming withdrew the Origin Source secret techniques. Wasn't this courting death? However, one of Lu Ming's palms started wriggling rapidly. To be precise, it wasn't Lu Ming's palm that was wriggling, but Qiuqiu. Qiuqiu wriggled and turned into a battle sword that Lu Ming held in his hand. On this battleship, the sword hilt was illusory, while the sword tip was real. This was the broken sword that Qiuqiu had swallowed earlier. Qiuqiu had used it before, and its power was terrifying. Come on. Lu Ming held the combat sword in his hand and slashed madly at the divine sabers of Soldier Eye. Dang, 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 dense clashing sounds were heard. Those divine sabers were sent flying one by one, dancing in the air. Then Lu Ming swung his sword and clashed with Lu Tianxin. After a violent explosion, Lu Ming's body trembled and he took 2 steps back. However, Lu Tianxin floated back. Such power! Lu Ming's eyes lit up. After Qiuqiu turned into this broken sword, its power had increased tremendously. He was completely at a disadvantage when fighting Lu Tianxin head-on. However, he had gained the upper hand in the previous exchange. Kill! After repelling Lu Tianxin, Lu Ming shouted and charged at Soldier Eye with his sword. Die, brat! Bing Tong roared. The huge centipede began to twist its body, and the terrifying divine sabers slashed toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming did not dodge and charged forward with his battle sword. Clang! 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 More than 100 battle swords were sent flying. Lu Ming broke through the divine sabers and arrived in front of Soldier Eye, slashing down with his battle sword. Clang! The combat sword landed on the gigantic centipede, emitting the sound of metal clashing. Sparks flew everywhere. Lu Ming felt as though he had struck a piece of iron. At this moment, Lu Tianxin arrived. A bright divine light shot out from his hand and went straight for Lu Ming's head. Lu Ming blocked it with his sword and broke through the divine light that Lu Tianxin had shot out. He rushed up and slashed at Lu Tianxin with his battle sword. Lu Tianxin swung his fist. His fist was covered in endless light as it collided with the battleship. Boom! It was as if two planets had collided. The difference was that Lu Ming had retreated a shorter distance, while Lu Tianxin had retreated a longer distance. Powerful indeed. That centipede has such a tough shell. Lu Ming was secretly shocked. The other party's ability was indeed shocking. However, Soldier Eye and Lu Tianxin were even more shocked. On Soldier Eye's body, where Lu Ming had slashed, there was a deep sword wound and blood was seeping out. How is this possible? Soldier Eye roared in his heart. After he had transformed into his primitive divine body, he knew how strong his defense was. Even if he did not fight back, his opponent would not be able to break through his defense. He used to think that no one below the Sir God level could break through his defense. However, his shell had been broken. Lu Tianxin's fist was trembling. There was also a sword wound on his fist, and blood was seeping out. Chapter 34:17. Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin looked at each other and saw the seriousness and hesitation in each other's eyes. At this point in the battle, they were hesitant. Could they still kill Lu Ming? They wanted to retreat. The two of them moved and leaned against each other, afraid that Lu Ming would defeat them one by one. Bam! At this moment, Lu Ming took a step forward and shot up into the sky. He waved his combat sword and charged toward Lu Tianxin and Bing Tong. Kill! Kill! Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin shouted at the same time and charged toward Lu Ming. Once again, the two of them clashed and fought fiercely. The two of them fought in the sky and at Fengyan Mountain. They were locked in a fierce battle, and after a few hundred moves, there was still no clear winner. Boom! Boom! After a few more explosions, Lu Ming, Bing Tong, and Lu Tianxin retreated. They retreated tens of thousands of meters and faced each other from afar. At this moment, Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin had a few wounds on their bodies. Although they were not fatal, they were still bleeding. On the other hand, Lu Ming did not have any wounds on his body because he was protected by Qiuqiu's armor. However, there was a rebounding force that went through the armor and injured Lu Ming. Many of his bones were broken, and Lu Ming used his divine power to reconnect them. Damn it! Why is this kid's divine power so dense? Is it endless? Can it be used up? Bing Tong roared in his heart and was even more shocked. It was the same for Lu Tianxin. She found it hard to calm down. They came from powerful forces in the primitive universe and were well informed. They had seen many perverted geniuses. However, it was extremely rare to see someone as perverted as Lu Ming. The two of them wanted to retreat even more. If this continued, their divine power would not be able to hold on. Lu Ming, this is bad. My power is almost used up. I can't maintain the form of the combat sword. Qiuqiu sent a message to Lu Ming. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed and his heart skipped a beat. Indeed, Qiuqiu did not have the quantifying formula. After such a long battle, it was normal that his divine power was about to run out. However, without Qiuqiu's help, Lu Ming would have died if he had to face Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin alone. However, Lu Ming's face didn't show the slightest change. His fighting spirit was still arrogant, and he looked like he wanted to fight to the end. At this moment, Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin looked at each other and nodded silently. Lu Ming, your strength is indeed not bad. Fine, I'll spare your life today. We'll fight another day. Bing Tong spoke, his voice resounding throughout the entire place. They're going to stop fighting. Many people were surprised. All the people present were geniuses, and none of them were stupid. Bing Tong's words meant that he wanted to stop the battle. Obviously, he was not confident in Lu Ming. What he said was just to give himself a way out. No matter when you want to fight, I will accompany you to the end. Lu Ming was delighted, and his eyes were filled with fighting spirit. Great. However, Lu Ming, let me tell you, if you break the rules like this, we won't be the only ones looking for you. Let's go. Having said that, Bing Tong turned around and left. Lu Tianxin did the same. When the two alliance leaders left, the people from the two forces naturally followed them. Let's go too. Let's go. Since the people from Soldier Peak Alliance and Sky Heart Alliance had left, the people from the other forces didn't dare to stay any longer. They quickly brought their men and left, afraid that they would be too late. Lu Ming didn't chase after them. At that moment, he didn't have the strength to chase after them. Qiuqiu's divine power couldn't hold on for much longer. Moreover, Sumo's injuries weren't light either. If this continued, his injuries would worsen. The other party's retreat was exactly what he wanted. They've retreated. The people from the Dragon Alliance were the happiest. All of them smiled and were pleasantly surprised. Initially, they thought that the Dragon Alliance was in danger. However, they didn't expect Lu Ming's strength to exceed their expectations. With his strength alone, he managed to fend off the attacks of the 10 forces in the eastern region of Fengyun Mountain. Moreover, he managed to fight Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin to a draw. Although he had borrowed external help, it was an unimaginable result. Listen up. In the future, if anyone comes to join the Dragon Alliance, don't take them in for the time being. Lu Ming instructed his subordinates. Tianxing, Shui Chu, and the others' eyes lit up. Then they shouted, yes. Lu Ming felt a little helpless. Based on the ratio that he had given, there would be more people joining him in the future. This was tantamount to touching the cake of others. The leaders of the other forces wouldn't let him off easily. This time, it was Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin. Next time, if someone even more terrifying came, Lu Ming would be in danger. Therefore, he had to bear with it for the time being. Now was the time to lay low. Anyway, the primordial divine crystals were enough for Lu Ming. With a large amount of primordial divine crystals, Lu Ming was improving rapidly in all aspects. He just had to bear with it for a while. When he had a breakthrough in his cultivation, it wouldn't be too late to recruit more people. Currently, Lu Ming's cultivation was only in the 6th layer of the King God realm. When he reached the 7th or 8th layer of the King God realm, he would have nothing to fear with Qiuqiu. After giving his orders, Lu Ming returned to his secluded cultivation area. He took out a healing elixir and swallowed it to heal his injuries. After a while, when Lu Ming's injuries were completely healed, he continued to refine the primordial divine crystals. The news of the previous battle spread like a whirlwind, shocking everyone. Moreover, after the battle, more people came to join Lu Ming. They wanted to join the Dragon Alliance. Lu Ming had enough fighting strength to protect them. Moreover, he gave them good treatment. What reason did they have not to join? However, they were all rejected by Tianxing and the others. They clearly told them that the Dragon Alliance was no longer recruiting. Those who wanted to join Lu Ming could only leave helplessly. When the leaders of the major forces heard the news, they immediately heaved a sigh of relief. In this world, the leaders of the major forces could not force other geniuses to swear an oath of life origin to join them. If they did so, no other geniuses would join them in the future. Therefore, the subordinates of these forces could come and go freely. Now that they heard that the Dragon Alliance was no longer recruiting, they heaved a sigh of relief. Otherwise, they would have to increase their treatment to keep people. Just like that, the Fengyun Mountain fell into relative peace. Of course, the occasional fight was unavoidable. Lu Ming did not care about what was happening outside. He focused on cultivating and refining the primordial divine crystals. Time passed year after year. In the blink of an eye, another 50 years had passed. In 50 years, Lu Ming had refined a few thousand pieces of primordial divine crystals. However, these primordial divine crystals paled in comparison to his harvest. In the past 50 years, he had stored more than 100,000 pieces of primordial divine crystals. These were all resources for his future cultivation. In the past 50 years, Lu Ming had been improving rapidly. He was improving every day. Lu Ming had cultivated the purple-armored ancient god body to the peak of the purple-armored ancient god body. Chapter 34:18. There's still a way to improve. When Lu Ming reached the peak of the purple-armored ancient god body, he felt that something was wrong. He realized that the peak of the purple-armored ancient god body was not the end. There was still a lot of room for improvement. However, in the ancient god skill that Lu Ming had obtained in the ancient god world, the purple-armored ancient god body was the peak of the purple-armored ancient god body. Could it be that the ancient god skill that I have is incomplete? Lu Ming frowned. It was possible. Lu Ming would not be wrong. He was 100% sure that there were realms above the purple-armored ancient god body. He thought of Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin. Although they did not cultivate the ancient god body but other primitive god bodies, he could still compare them. Their primitive god bodies had almost surpassed the peak of the purple-armored ancient god body and were about to enter another level. It could be the level above the purple-armored ancient god body. It seems like I have to buy the complete ancient god skill. Lu Ming said softly, "In this world, there were many supreme talents from various forces and races in the primitive universe who cultivated the primitive god body. He believed that there must be others who cultivated the ancient god body and could buy the complete ancient god skill. My cultivation has also reached the 7th layer of King God Realm." Lu Ming smiled. After refining so many primitive divine crystals, Lu Ming's cultivation had finally reached the 7th layer of King God Realm. He had entered the ranks of high-level King God Realm. This speed was extremely shocking. It's a pity that the primitive divine crystals can't be absorbed by the quantifying formula. Otherwise, the refining speed would be greatly increased. A thought flashed through Lu Ming's mind. The primitive divine crystals had to be refined by the ancient god heart to produce the blood qi and increase the strength of the ancient god body. If the quantifying formula was used to refine the primitive divine crystals, that effect would be removed and only pure energy would be left. During this period, not only had his ancient god body and cultivation made great breakthroughs, but Lu Ming's origin divine power factor was also increasing rapidly. Another 2 types of divine power's origin divine power factor had undergone a 3rd awakening. Now, Lu Ming had 10 types of god power that had awakened 3 times, leaving only 1 type of god power that had yet to awaken 3 times. During this period of time, I will temporarily slow down the refinement of the primordial divine crystal and comprehend the quintessence divine energy factor wholeheartedly. I will strive to awaken the last type of divine energy for the 3rd time. Lu Ming muttered. Then he prepared to close his eyes and cultivate. At this moment, his voice transmission, Jade Talisman, buzzed. Someone was sending him a message. Lu Ming took it out and took a look. Tianxing had sent it to him. Lu Ming's expression changed slightly as he scanned the contents of the Jade Talisman with his spiritual sense. News from Tianxing said that something had happened to Fengyan Mountain recently. At the western side of Fengyan Mountain, a new force suddenly emerged. It was the Barbarian League. This force had many people. Not only were there young geniuses, but there were also experts from the older generation. Their overall strength was very strong. Not long after they appeared, they destroyed a few forces in the western region of Fengyan Mountain, causing a commotion among the other forces. Barbarian Alliance, could it be the barbarian race? Lu Ming's eyes flickered. During this period of time, there had been no news from the barbarian tribe. It seemed that they had finally appeared. The barbarian tribe. Lu Ming muttered. His eyes flashed with a cold light. The barbarian tribe was bent on killing him. He would not let them go. Sooner or later, there would be a war between the two forces. Then, Lu Ming replied to Tianxing. He asked them to keep an eye on the Barbarian League and report to him if anything happened. Lu Ming then continued to cultivate. He had to seize the time to raise his cultivation level. Man Ku, the genius of the barbarian tribe, was extremely powerful. He was definitely not weaker than Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin. Therefore, he had to be stronger to be confident. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, another 8 years had passed. In these 8 years, Lu Ming did not refine the primordial divine crystal. Instead, he focused on comprehending the quintessence divine energy factor. Finally, the last type of divine energy had awakened 3 times. In this way, all of Lu Ming's divine powers had awakened 3 times. There were a total of 11 types of divine powers. In addition to Lu Ming's cultivation level of the 7th level of the King God realm and the strength of his peak purple-armored ancient god body, Lu Ming's combat strength had reached a new height. Now, Lu Ming was confident that he could contend with Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin without Qiuqiu's help. Of course, he could only contend with them. After all, their quintessence divine energy factor had awakened 4 times, and they were peak divine kings. In terms of divine powers, even though Lu Ming had mastered 11 types of divine powers and had awakened 3 times, it was still difficult for him to contend with them. He needed to use the battle formula to contend with them. Of course, with Qiuqiu's strength, Lu Ming was confident that he could kill Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin. After all, Qiuqiu had not been idle these past few years. He had devoured a large number of divine artifacts, and his body was constantly improving. Although he had not broken through to the divine Lord realm, he was extremely close to it. His strength was several times stronger than before. At this moment, Lu Ming received another message from Tianxing. Is it the Man League again? Gather all the forces in Fengyuan Mountain and gather at the peak of the mountain. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. All these years he had been paying attention to the Man League. In the past 8 years, the Man League had developed rapidly. Now, the western region of Fengyuan Mountain had been completely occupied by the Man League. They had occupied a quarter of the territory of Fengyuan Mountain. Without a doubt, the Man League had become the most powerful force in Fengyuan Mountain. Not long ago, the Man League had sent out a message to gather all the forces in Fengyuan Mountain. They would gather at the peak of Fengyuan Mountain in 7 days to discuss important matters. Looks like the Man League is ambitious. They want to occupy Fengyuan Mountain and become the mountain master. Lu Ming sneered. There were a total of 13 famed mountains in this world. 11 of them were unified, and each of them was occupied by a powerful force. Only 2 famed mountains were in a state of chaos. Forces of all sizes were fighting for supremacy, and it was a mess. Obviously, the Man League wanted to occupy and unify Fengyuan Mountain. It's time to go out for a walk. Lu Ming muttered to himself. He then stood up and walked out. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. There was a large piece of land at the peak of Fengyuan Mountain. It was wide and flat, suitable for gatherings. It could easily accommodate millions of people. On this day, the peak of Fengyuan Mountain was crowded with people. All the forces in the eastern, southern, and northern regions of Fengyuan Mountain had gathered. They were divided into different forces and stood at various spots on the peak. The Dragon League was naturally here as well. At the front of the Dragon League, Lu Ming was wearing a black robe that covered his entire body. Thick devil qi emanated from his body and shrouded him, preventing others from using their spiritual consciousness to probe him. All these years, the Man League had not attacked the Dragon League. Obviously, they did not know that the leader of the Dragon League was Lu Ming. After all, the Dragon League had only occupied the former territory of the Cloud Sky League and had not continued to expand. Since the Man League was focused on the western region, it was normal that they did not know. Chapter 34:19. There were more than 10 forces in the east, south, and north of Fengyuan Mountain. All of them were silent and solemn as they waited. "They're here." Suddenly someone spoke. Everyone's gaze turned to the west. Over there, several figures were flying over. "It's the barbarian tribe." Lu Ming's eyes flickered. There were a few thousand people flying towards them from the west. Among them, there were a few hundred who were tall and burly. They were wrapped in beast skins, and there were some who were old and some who were young. They were from the barbarian tribe. As for the rest, they were obviously subdued by the barbarian tribe and had joined them. Soon, the people from the Barbarian Alliance arrived and landed. "Ha ha ha, looks like you're on time." There was a loud laugh from the barbarian tribe. An unusually tall and burly young man stepped out, and his voice reverberated throughout the area. "Man Ku." Lu Ming squinted his eyes. That person was the peerless genius of the barbarian tribe, Man Ku. Previously, he had been tricked by Lu Ming and was severely injured by Lu Ming's array. Unfortunately, Lu Ming still managed to escape. Since then, Lu Ming had never seen Man Ku again. "Man Ku, why did you call us here?" At that moment, a young man asked loudly. He was the leader of one of the forces in the north. "Looks like everyone is here." "Since everyone is here, I'll get straight to the point." Man Ku scanned the area and said, "Fengyun Mountain has been in chaos for many years, and there are constant disputes between the forces. This has hindered the development of Fengyun Mountain. Therefore, I feel that it's time to end this chaos. The unification of Fengyun Mountain is the way to go." As expected, Man Ku's words caused many people's hearts to tremble. Many leaders' eyes flashed with light. "Ha ha ha! Unification of Fengyun Mountain? What a joke! Let me ask you, who will be in charge of Fengyun Mountain? How will the primordial divine crystals be distributed?" A cold voice came from the east. It was Bing Tong. Man Ku looked towards the east and said, "The strongest force will be in charge. As for the distribution, it's simple. We'll distribute it the same way as the other famous mountains." Ha! Many of the leaders sneered. Wasn't the strongest force the Barbarian Alliance? Furthermore, it would be distributed like the other unified, famed mountains? In the other unified, famed mountains, the strongest person was called the Mountain Lord. Below him were a few deputy mountain lords. These people stood at the pinnacle. Most of the primordial divine crystals were divided among them. Below them, there were also some powerful cadres. However, these people received fewer primordial divine crystals. If Fengyun Mountain was the same as the other famed mountains, then most of benefits would be taken by the Mountain Lord. How could the leaders of these forces agree to it? They originally had a lot of income every year, but now it was all gone. Haha, Man Ku, have you finally revealed your ambition? If you want to be the master of Fengyun Mountain, just say it. Bing Tong mocked. So what if I am? Now that the Barbarian Alliance is the strongest, it is only right for us to unify the Fengyun Mountain. Man Ku said coldly, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Since the Barbarian Alliance wants to unify the Fengyun Mountain, please forgive us for not accompanying you. Bing Tong said coldly, the Sky Heart Alliance will not accompany you. Goodbye. Lu Tianxin said. After she finished speaking, she wanted to leave with her people. If you want to leave, then leave thoroughly. Get out of Fengyun Mountain. Otherwise, I will kill you. Man Ku's cold voice resounded. Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin froze and stopped in their tracks. Man Ku, don't be too overbearing. Do you really think that you are the master of Fengyun Mountain? Let me tell you, with the strength of the Barbarian Alliance and Man Ku, it is not enough to unify the Fengyun Mountain. Bing Tong shouted, That's right. If the north, south, and east regions work together, we will be able to destroy the Barbarian Alliance. Lu Tianxin added, The leaders of the other forces were also tempted to take action. They were all deep in thought. You are courting death. Man Ku's eyes were filled with cold killing intent. Boom! He took a step forward and dashed towards Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin. Since you are courting death, I will destroy you first. Man Ke shouted coldly. He clenched his fist, and an ancient bronze sword appeared in his hand. This was his origin secret skill. Swoosh! Swoosh! The bronze sword slashed out, and two sword radiances slashed towards Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin. Don't think that I am afraid of you. Die! Bing Tong shouted. He waved his hand, and a shocking blade radiance shot out. At the same time, Lu Tianxin attacked. Her fist shone brightly, and a terrifying fist radiance shot up to the sky towards the sword radiance. Boom! 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 Man Ke's sword radiance was destroyed. However, Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin shuddered and retreated slightly. Barbarian God Sword! Man Ke shouted as he slashed out with his bronze sword. His swordsmanship was simple and majestic. Every move seemed simple, but it was filled with an ancient feeling. Its power was shocking. This guy's sword skills are stronger than the last time. They seem to have become more mysterious. What is going on? Lu Ming was surprised. He felt that Man Ke's sword skills had undergone a transformation. For example, his sword skills were incomplete in the past. Now they were complete and their power had increased. Boom! Boom! The battle between Man Ke, Bing Tong, and Lu Tianxin was intense. They were all peak divine kings and had awakened their origin divine force for the fourth time. They had all sorts of divine skills and secret skills. In the blink of an eye, they had exchanged dozens of blows. Man Ke was powerful. He was able to suppress Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin, even though he was fighting against two of them. The other faction leaders' eyes lit up, but they did not attack. When the sandpiper and the clam fought, the fishermen would benefit. If Man Ke, Bing Tong, and Lu Tianxin were injured, they would be the ones to benefit. Even if they could not injure each other, they could let Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin test Man Ke's strength. In the blink of an eye, they had exchanged more than 10 blows. Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin were forced to retreat. What? Is this all you've got? You want to fight me? Man Ke sneered. Roar! At this moment, Bing Tong shouted and used his primordial, godly body. His body changed rapidly and turned into a giant centipede. His legs were like divine blades as he flew towards Man Ke. At the same time, Lu Tianxin unleashed her primordial divine body and attacked Man Ke with all her might. Are you finally going to use your trump card? However, you are overestimating yourself if you want to compete with me in terms of the primordial divine body. Man Ke said indifferently with a mocking smile on his face. Following that, he let out a loud roar as his body swelled up and rapidly grew bigger. In an instant, he was 10,000 meters tall. However, that was not the end. His body continued to grow until he was 100,000 meters tall. 100,000 meters. Oh my God! It is the 8th transformation of the primordial divine body. Oh no! Man Ke's primordial divine body has reached the 8th transformation. Chapter 30, 420. Clang, clang, clang. At this moment, the divine sabers formed by the centipede legs slashed Man Ke's body. However, the sound of metal clashing rang out, and sparks flew everywhere. Then, the divine sabers were all sent flying back. However, only a few shallow marks were left on his body. That is, Lu Ming's pupils shrank. Without a doubt, Man Ke was using the barbarian god physique. Lu Ming had seen him use it before. However, the last time he used it, it was far from this size. It was only 1,000 meters tall. Now, it had grown to 100,000 meters tall. Moreover, the stone armor on his body was crystal clear and looked like it was made of crystal. It gave off a feeling that it was indestructible. The divine saber formed by the soldiers, I could only leave a shallow mark on it. Then, Lu Ming thought of the other people's exclamations. The eighth transformation of the primordial divine body? What did that mean? It was obvious that the ancient god body was of a higher level than the purple-armored ancient god body. For a moment, thoughts flashed through Lu Ming's mind. At this moment, Man-Ku laughed maniacally. My barbarian god body has already reached the peak of the eighth transformation. You haven't even reached the eighth transformation. You want to fight me? Go die. Man-Ku laughed. Although he was huge, he was extremely agile. He waved his bronze battle sword and charged towards Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin. Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin were shocked. They roared and unleashed their strongest attacks. The terrifying fist energy and the resplendent divine saber pierced through the air towards Man-Ku. However, Man-Ku didn't care about this and allowed their attacks to land on his body. Boom, boom, boom. Man-Ku's body only swayed slightly. There were only some marks on his stone armor, but it didn't break at all. You want to break my barbarian god body? You're still a little lacking. Die! Man-Ku roared and slashed down with his bronze sword. Not good, retreat. Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin's faces changed as they quickly retreated. But it was too late. The bronze sword flashed and slashed at the giant centipede that was transformed from Soldier Eye. A section of the giant centipede's tail was chopped off. Bing Tong screamed as his body began to shrink rapidly. What a powerful attack! Lu Ming's eyes flashed. The centipede's defensive power was shocking, but it was unable to block Man-Ku's sword. Man-Ku's strength was far above the weapon pupil. The soldier pupil was severely wounded, and it was hard for him to maintain his primitive divine body. Die! Man-Ku shouted as he stomped down on Bing Tong. Man-Ku's body was gigantic. He was 100,000 meters tall, while Bing Tong's body was shrinking. Compared to Man-Ku, Bing Tong was like a small worm. No, save me, Bing Tong screamed in fear. However, Lu Tianxin couldn't save him at all. He couldn't even protect himself, so he quickly retreated. You want to leave? Stay. Man-Ku waved his huge sword which covered the sky. It turned into a huge sword image that shot towards Lu Tianxin, cutting off her escape route. Lu Tianxin could only try her best to resist. Man-Ku's foot had already landed. Bing Tong was unwilling to give up and tried his best to resist. However, he was severely injured and could not break through Man-Ku's defense. Boom! Finally, Man-Ku's foot landed heavily on the ground. Bing Tong was under his foot, and he landed heavily on the ground. The ground shook violently, and a huge crater appeared. Soldier pupil is dead, someone said in a hoarse voice. That was because they could feel that soldier pupil's life force had completely disappeared. Soldier pupil was stomped to death by Man-Ku's foot. At that moment, Lu Tianxin was no match for Man-Ku. She was forced to retreat and coughed out blood. There was a deep sword wound on her body, and she was bleeding profusely. I surrender. I'm willing to surrender. Lu Tianxin shouted in fear. If this continued, he would end up like soldier pupil. It's too late to surrender now. Die in peace. Man-Ku shouted as his attacks became more aggressive. He waved his sword with his right hand and punched with his left. He launched a barrage of attacks. Everyone, let's attack together. If he kills me, he won't let any of you go. Unless all of you surrender, Lu Tianxin shouted. He wanted to ask the experts from the north and south region to attack. There were experts from the north and south regions who were no weaker than them. They might even be stronger than them. Now he only had a chance to survive if the other experts attacked him together. However, the experts from the north and south region looked hesitant. Hurry up! Attack! Lu Tianxin shouted crazily. However, in the next moment, he was hit by Man-Ku's fist. He flew out like a cannonball and slammed into a wall. Cracks appeared on the hard wall. Everyone, let's attack. Otherwise, there will be no place for us in Fengyan Mountain. At that moment, a young man from the south region said. This person was an overlord from the south region. He was extremely powerful and his name was Fu Xiu. Attack? Man Ku's primordial divine body has reached the peak of the 8th transformation. He specializes in defense, and his defense is invincible. With our strength, I'm afraid it will be difficult to break his defense. If we can't break his defense, we won't be able to defeat him. Another leader of the forces said, "It's easy to break through his defense. You just need to have a corresponding attack power. For example, if your primordial divine body has reached the 8th transformation and you have an origin secret technique that's good at attacking, you can break through his defense." Fu Xiu said, "Primordial divine body 8th transformation? Have you made a breakthrough?" The face of the other leader changed abruptly as he looked at Fu Xiu in shock. Fu Xiu nodded silently and said, "Let's attack." "All right, let's attack together and kill Man Ku. Let's join forces." The leaders of the other factions also voiced their opinions. Man Ku was aware of this. His expression changed slightly as he uttered a roar, "Kill!" The giant bronze sword slashed at Lu Tianxin. "No!" Lu Tianxin screamed in horror, seeing that he could not withstand the attack. His body quickly shrank to his normal size. He wanted to use his small body to dodge the attack. However, Man Ku's sword light had completely enveloped the area and locked onto him. There was no way he could escape. Boom! The huge bronze battle sword smashed down, and Lu Tianxin let out an unwilling scream. Her body exploded, and her soul was destroyed. In the Fengyun Mountain East region, the two overlords, Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin, were killed. At that moment, Fu Xiu and the other 4 experts dashed toward Man Ku. 5 streams of light tore through the void and charged toward Man Ku. There was no doubt that those who dared to attack Man Ku were top experts. They were all peak supreme beings, and their origin divine power factors had all awakened 4 times. Their strength was no weaker than Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin. Chapter 34:21. The 5 experts attacked Man Ku at the same time. Each of their attacks could easily kill a large number of ordinary peak divine kings. Swoosh! At the critical moment, Man Ku swung his sword horizontally. The sword light was like a rainbow, covering the sky as it chopped down on the 5 attacks. 5 consecutive huge explosions rang out. All 5 attacks were blocked by Man Ku. "Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wishes." Man Ku looked at Fu Xiu and the others with a ferocious expression. "Man Ku, although you are strong, you are not invincible in the Divine King realm." Fu Xiu said calmly. However, his aura was getting stronger. Roar! Suddenly, Fu Xiu let out a roar and his body swelled rapidly. He turned into a rhinoceros. The rhinoceros was covered in black scales and had a pair of wings. There was a horn on its head that was as sharp as a heavenly blade. The rhinoceros was huge. It did not stop growing even when it was 10,000 meters tall. In the end, it was at least 50,000 meters tall and 100,000 meters long. It was even bigger than Man Ku when it spread its wings. The 8th transformation of the primordial divine body. Your primordial divine body has reached the 8th transformation. Man Ku's expression changed drastically as he exclaimed, "Man Ku, you are not the only one who has reached the 8th transformation. I have reached the 8th transformation as well. I can break through your barbarian divine body." Fu Xiu's voice came from the rhinoceros. The horn on his head shone brightly and emitted a terrifying aura. At the same time, a bronze blade appeared and merged with the horn on his head. The blade was Fu Xiu's origin secret technique. "You are only at the middle stage of the 8th transformation. Do you think you can fight me?" Man Ku shouted, "You can do it with us." Another young man said. He finally had some confidence after seeing Fu Xiu's primordial divine body. "Then let's try." Man Ke shouted and swung his bronze sword at Fu Xiu and the other four. The four of you restrain him. I will be the main attacker and break through his defense. Fu Xiu sent a message to the other four young men. As soon as he finished speaking, he flapped his wings and flew out. His horns shone brightly, and combined with his origin's secret technique, it made his body look like a war blade. He pierced through the air and charged at Man Ke. Die! Man Ke brandished his bronze great sword and chopped down. Clang! The giant bronze sword collided with Fu Xiu's horn, resulting in an earth-shattering roar. Boundless energy swept out in all directions, leaving terrifying sword and saber scars on the ground of Fengyun Peak. Retreat! The other people at the scene didn't dare to stay. They all stayed far away. Lu Ming brought the Dragon Alliance members and retreated far away, maintaining a distance from the battlefield. Attack! At this moment, the other four top experts also took action. They turned into their original divine bodies and dashed toward Man Ke. One of them actually turned into an incomparably huge spider, but it had 18 claws. It opened its mouth, and a huge spider web flew out, enveloping Man Ke. There was also a young man who had transformed into a giant snake with a human face and a snake body. He opened his mouth and spat out a poisonous mist. When heaven and earth were first created, many primitive divine spirits were born. These primitive divine spirits came in all shapes and sizes. Many of them were even the ancestors of the various races. Therefore, the primitive divine bodies that were cultivated came in all shapes and sizes. These four young experts were also the leaders of their respective forces. In Fengyun Peak, they were as famous as Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin. Their primitive divine bodies were also existences who were about to enter the 8th transformation. Their combat strength was not weak at all. The four of them joined forces, not to attack, but to trap Man Ke. They used all kinds of methods to envelop him. Break! Man Ke blocked Fu Xiu's attack and swung his sword horizontally, trying to break out of the encirclement of the four experts. However, the four experts flashed and dodged Man Ke's attack. Then they used all kinds of methods to attack Man Ke, hoping to trap him. For a moment, Man Ke was somewhat affected and his movements slowed down. For example, the snake venom was extremely terrifying and could paralyze the nerves. The spider web was extremely tough. When Man Ke swung his sword, it didn't immediately unravel. Instead, it almost entangled him. Fu Xiu wouldn't miss this opportunity. He flapped his wings and charged toward Man Ke. Clang! Fu Xiu's head collided with Man Ke's body, making an ear-piercing sound. The crystal-like stone armor on Man Ke's body trembled violently. In the next moment, a crack was heard and the stone armor cracked. Fu Xiu's horn pierced through it. Man Ke let out a roar and took a few steps back. Then he threw a punch at Fu Xiu, knocking him back. However, a bloody hole still appeared on Man Ke's body, and blood kept flowing out. It's broken! The other four young experts were overjoyed when they saw this. Fu Xiu was indeed able to break through Man Ke's defense. As long as he could break through Man Ke's defense, it would be easy to kill him. Attack with all your might. The other four young geniuses used their full strength, using all sorts of entrapment techniques to surround Man Ke. Man Ke tried his best to break free, but it was difficult for him to do so. His movements were greatly affected. On the other side, Fu Xiu launched another attack. His body was like a huge sharp knife, crashing into Fu Xiu's body. Fu Xiu roared angrily. His stone armor was broken again, and a deep wound appeared. His flesh and bones were exposed, and blood kept flowing out. Man Ke let out a painful roar that was as loud as thunder. Don't you dare hurt young Master Man Ke. If you want to win by numbers, we'll be your opponents. Angry roars were heard. Then a dozen figures pounced on Fu Xiu and the others like lightning. These were a dozen old barbarians. They were very old and did not have much lifespan left. They were all skin and bones, but they were very strong. Each of them was a peak divine king who had awakened their origin divine power factor 3 times. When Lu Ming first entered this world, he had suffered at the hands of these old barbarians. These old barbarians saw that man was no match for them and immediately rushed out. "You're courting death. You guys continue to trap him. Leave these old guys to me." Fu Xiu's voice was heard. His eyes flashed with a cold light. He flapped his wings and rushed out, making a terrifying whistling sound. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The next moment, from the top of Fu Xiu's head, rays of saber light burst out and slashed at the old barbarians. The saber light whistled at an astonishing speed. The old barbarian who was flying at the front was the first to bear the brunt. "Break!" The old barbarian roared. He held a giant axe and swung it, trying to break the saber light. However, when the axe hit the saber light, his face changed drastically. He saw that the battle axe in his hand had shattered. The saber light flashed and cut the old barbarian in half, killing him instantly. Chapter 34:22. The other blade lights did not stop and continued to attack the other old barbarians. Puff, puff, puff. Blood flashed and the blade flashed. 5 to 6 old barbarians were cut in half and died on the spot. Not good, retreat. The expressions of the remaining old berserkers changed drastically. They retreated madly, then gathered together to form a rune to fend off Fu Xiu. "It's too late to retreat now. Kill!" Fu Xiu's cold voice rang out. He flapped his wings, and his gigantic body turned into a gigantic blade. He charged towards the old berserkers and crashed into the rune they had set up. A dazzling light shot up into the sky, followed by a loud bang. There was a huge explosion, followed by screams of pain. When the light and screams disappeared, only Fu Xiu was left in the sky, and the old barbarians had disappeared without a trace. A bunch of old fogies who overestimate themselves. Fu Xiu said coldly. Many people sucked in a breath of cold air, especially the barbarians. Their faces were ugly, but they were secretly shocked. Fu Xiu's strength was indeed terrifying. Those old brute tribesmen could be said to be very powerful. Their divine origin force had been awakened for the 3rd time, and their lifespan was not long. They had cultivated for 5 full stellar years, and the power of their various divine skills was extremely terrifying. Their combat strength was almost at the peak of the divine king realm. However, there was still a huge gap between them and a terrifying heaven's pride like Fu Xiu. They couldn't compete at all. In just a few breaths, a dozen powerful barbarian elders were all killed. "Fu Xiu, I want you dead." At this moment, Man let out a furious roar. His body glowed, and he seized the opportunity to madly swing his bronze sword. In an instant, he had slashed out over 1,000 times. The attacks of the 4 experts finally cracked open a crack, and Man burst out. "Don't let him escape. Quick, surround him." The 4 young experts shouted. Their figures flashed, and all kinds of entrapment attacks were launched. At the same time, Fu Xiu also rushed towards Manku. However, at this moment, a malevolent expression appeared in Manku's eyes. He opened his mouth, and a snow-white bone flew out from his mouth. That's right, it was a bone. As soon as the bone flew out, a terrifying aura spread out. Roar! In the next moment, a terrifying roar came from one of the snow-white bones. The loud roar turned into a mysterious aura that spread in all directions. Fu Xiu and the 4 geniuses were the first to bear the brunt of this aura. Immediately, their bodies stiffened, and then they revealed looks of pain. All of their attacks stopped in an instant. That loud roar quickly spread into the distance. Many people were enveloped by it. Some people's expressions changed drastically, and some people with lower cultivation levels let out miserable screams. Their faces were filled with pain. "It's a soul attack. Get back." Lu Ming's expression changed. He could clearly feel that when that aura passed through his body, it turned into a strange energy that rushed towards his soul. However, his soul was protected by the frightening feather painting, which blocked this energy. But the other members of Dragon Alliance couldn't. Some of them revealed pained expressions, and some of them cried out. Hearing Lu Ming's words, they quickly retreated and distanced themselves from him. The others were the same, retreating frantically. The further away they were, the greater the impact. One could imagine how much Fu Xiao and the other 4 young experts had been affected by it. "Kill!" Man Ku roared as he swung his bronze sword at Fu Xiao. Not good. Fu Xiao was shocked. At the critical moment, he used all his strength to move sideways, but he was still a step too late. One of his wings was cut off by the bronze sword, and blood stained the sky. Fu Xiao was shocked and wanted to retreat, but the white bone that Man Ku used let out a loud roar, and a strange energy spread out, causing Fu Xiao's body to stiffen and his movements to slow down. Soul attack. Lu Ming squinted his eyes slightly. This white bone could affect the soul. It was extremely terrifying. In a battle between experts, a small difference could lead to a huge difference. Although Fu Xiao and the others were only slightly affected, the outcome of the battle could be worlds apart. Where did this man could get this treasure? Did he have a fortuitous encounter recently? Lu Ming's mind raced as he was filled with doubts. The last time he saw Man Ku, his barbarian god body, wasn't even at the purple-armored ancient god body. At most, it was at the peak of the blue-armored ancient god body. Moreover, Man Ku definitely didn't have the white bone. Otherwise, he would have used it when Lu Ming forced him into a desperate situation by borrowing the power of the array. But this time, not only did Man Ku have the white bone, but his primordial ancient god body had also surpassed the purple-armored ancient god body and reached the next level. Moreover, it had reached the peak of the next level, and his combat strength had increased by a large margin. Aside from a fortuitous encounter, it was hard to explain. In an instant, many thoughts flashed through Lu Ming's mind, but the battle on the battlefield was still ongoing. Man could use the white bone to affect Fu Xiao, and then continued to slash with the bronze sword. Roar! Fu Xiao roared, trying his best to control himself to resist Man Ku. At the same time, the other 4 young experts also attacked. However, their souls were affected by the white bone, and their strength was still affected. Their combat strength was weaker, and their speed was also slower. In an instant, Man Ku and Fu Xiao exchanged a few moves. Fu Xiao was no match for Man Ku, and his body was slashed by the bronze sword. A sword wound that was a few hundred meters long appeared on his body, and Fu Xiao's head was almost cut off. Fu Xiao was severely injured, and he coughed up blood and retreated. The other 4 young experts wanted to trap Man Ku again, but Man Ku had already escaped from the encirclement. Moreover, he had the white bone's help, and it was easy for him to escape from the encirclement, and he continued to attack Fu Xiao. Barbaric god sword, bloody killing god. Man Ku roared, and the dazzling sword light completely enveloped Fu Xiao. Fu Xiao tried his best, and the horn on his head flew out to attack Man Ku, but he was sent flying by Man Ku's sword. In the end, Fu Xiao let out a shrill scream as his neck was slashed by the bronze sword, and his huge head flew out. Then the sky full of sword light fell, and Fu Xiao's head was smashed into pieces. Fu Xiao had fallen. Not good. The other 4 experts were shocked when they saw Fu Xiao's tragic death, and they quickly retreated. It's too late to retreat now. Man Ku's cold voice resounded throughout the battlefield, and he strode forward, attacking the 4 experts. Roar! The white bone floated above Man Ku's head, and it kept roaring. The roar had no effect on Man Ku, but it had a huge impact on the others. The 4 young experts had to use a lot of energy to protect their souls, and in this way, their strength would be greatly reduced. Man caught up with the four of them in an instant, and the bronze sword turned into a sky full of sword light and violently slashed at the four young experts. The four experts joined forces to resist. Originally, with their strength, if they joined forces, they could resist for a while, but now that they were affected by the white bone, it was difficult. Chapter 34:23. The four young experts barely managed to block more than 10 moves before one of them was almost cut in half by the battle sword. He retreated frantically and was severely injured. Since one of them was severely injured, the remaining 3 were even weaker. Not long after, all of them were severely injured. Time to send you on your way. Manka's eyes were extremely ferocious. As for the spectators, they were all sighing. It seemed that the chaotic situation in Fengyan Mountain was finally coming to an end. It was going to be unified. Manka had suppressed the crowd. The outcome was set. Especially those from the Dragon Alliance, their eyes were filled with unwillingness. They had followed Lu Ming and lived a good life. If Fengyan Mountain were to be unified, how could those who followed the barbarian tribe be treated so well? However, the current situation was almost certain. Manku was too strong, and the other experts could not resist him. The outcome of resisting was too tragic. Bing Tong, Lu Tianxin, and Fu Xiu were killed one after another. The remaining 4 experts could not even protect themselves. Although Lu Ming was strong, he was still not as strong as Manku. Just as everyone was sighing, Manku launched a violent attack. The 4 experts were beaten back and vomited blood. Their injuries were even more serious. It seemed that defeat was only a matter of time. I surrender. I'm willing to submit to you and manage Fengyuan Mountain with you. I'll be your deputy. At that moment, a young man shouted, "You're about to die, and you want to be the deputy? You must be dreaming." Manka sneered and rejected him directly. "Then I don't want to be the deputy." The young man shouted, "If you want to stay alive, I'll give you a chance. Surrender and swear on your life origin that you'll listen to my orders. Not only in this world, but when you return to the Eldritch universe, you'll listen to my orders for the rest of your life." Manka said ferociously, "What? You? Don't go overboard. I can listen to your orders in this world, but not in the Eldritch universe." The young man shouted. He was a peerless genius and came from a powerful force in the Eldritch universe. His future was bright. He could listen to Manka's orders for a short period of time in this world, but how could he listen to Manku for the rest of his life? "If you don't agree, then die." Manku shouted coldly and slashed out his battle sword, cutting off one of the young man's arms. Then the sword light slashed horizontally, wanting to kill the young man. "I surrender! I surrender!" The young man roared. Under the threat of death, he chose to surrender. Even though he was unwilling to be controlled by the other party for the rest of his life, there was nothing he could do if he were to die. "Take this with you first. Swear it later." A headband appeared in Manku's hand, and he tossed it to the other party. The young man caught the headband, and his expression changed. He was extremely unwilling, but when he felt the intense killing intent from Manku, he finally compromised. Gritting his teeth, he put on the headband. From now on, his life and death would be in Manku's hands. "What about you guys?" Following which, Manka's gaze turned towards the remaining 3 youths. As of this moment, the 3 young men were seriously injured and unable to fight. Manka wasn't in a hurry to attack them. He wanted to subjugate them one by one, which would be very useful to him when he returned to the Your Wilds universe. How foolish! Lu Ming shook his head in his heart and secretly sneered. This man must have been blinded by his victory. Making these geniuses swear on their life source to be loyal to him was simply courting death. These geniuses came from the major forces in the Your Wilds universe. Some of them were even stronger than the Taishu dynasty or the barbarian tribe. The prodigies of that faction had sworn to be loyal to Man-Ku forever. If the powerhouses of that faction were to find out about this in the future, they would probably fly into a rage and kill Man-Ku in the dark. Once Man-Ku was dead, the oath would naturally be useless. This was also the reason why most people in this world wouldn't make others swear on their life source. However, Man-Ku didn't think too much about it. He had been blinded by his victory. The remaining 3 youths' faces were extremely ugly. "Since you don't want to talk, I'll send you to hell together." Man-Ku's killing intent exploded. "All right, I promise you, I promise." In the end, one of the youths shouted and surrendered to Man-Ku's threat. "Put it on." Man-Ku took out a headband and tossed it to the youth. The youth caught it and put it on his head. "What about the 2 of you?" Following which, Man-Ku looked at the remaining 2 people. "You want me to listen to your orders for the rest of my life? Dream on. What's the difference between that and a puppet? You might as well kill me." One of the youths shouted coldly. "That's right. Do it. You want me to submit to you for the rest of my life? Impossible. You're not qualified." The second youth shouted. Not everyone had a backbone. These 2 youths had a strong sense of pride and backbone. They would rather die than submit. "Since that's the case, I'll send you to hell." Man-Ku's eyes flashed coldly. His aura exploded and he was about to attack. "It's time to strike." At this moment, Lu Ming said in a low voice. After the chaotic battle, the situation in Fengyan Mountain had changed drastically. It was time to strike. Moreover, Man-Ku had used up most of his trump cards. Lu Ming was more or less prepared. Lu Ming stepped out and walked towards Man-Ku. This immediately attracted everyone's attention. Now, there was still someone who dared to step out. What was he trying to do? Alliance leader. The members of the Dragon Alliance were also shocked. Their eyes flickered. What is he trying to do? The same thought crossed the minds of the others. Man-Ku and the other 2 youths also looked at Lu Ming. "Kid, show your true face. Don't hide your head and tail." Man-Ku shouted coldly. "Man-Ku, it's been a while. How have you been?" Lu Ming smiled. He waved his hand and took off the black robe on his body, revealing his true face. "It's you, Lu Ming." Man-Ku exclaimed when he saw Lu Ming. Then he emitted a cold, murderous intent. "Man-Ku, it's been a while since we last met. Your cultivation has improved a lot." Lu Ming smiled faintly. "Lu Ming, you still dare to attack after seeing my strength. Today will be the day you die." Man-Ku roared. His powerful aura shrouded Lu Ming. He ignored the other 2 youths. In comparison, he wanted to kill Lu Ming more. After all, Lu Ming was a genius of the Taishu dynasty. The Taishu dynasty and the barbarian tribe were mortal enemies. Man-Ku wanted to kill Lu Ming. Lu Ming was not afraid at all. He stepped forward and landed in front of the other 2 youths. His body also emitted a powerful aura. Is this person really going to fight with Man-Ku? Who is this person? Many people were shocked. I know. This person is the alliance leader of the Dragon Alliance. I heard that he is extremely powerful. He fought Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin to a draw. Someone recognized Lu Ming. It's the alliance leader of the Dragon Alliance. Many people suddenly realized. After all, the battle between Lu Ming and Bing Tong and Lu Tianxin had spread throughout Fengyan Mountain. Chapter 34:24. Lu Ming and Man-Ku stood facing each other as their auras clashed. Roar! Lu Ming let out the ancient god's roar. Then his body expanded rapidly and transformed into a purple-armored ancient god. Lu Ming had already reached the pinnacle of the purple-armored ancient god body. Although he was still 10,000 meters tall, his body was covered in dark purple scales that shone brightly. However, the difference between 10,000 meters and Man-Ku's 100,000 meters was still too big. So you've already reached the pinnacle of the seventh transformation of the ancient god body. However, you're too naive if you think you can fight me with that. I'll send you on your way. Man sneered as he looked down at Lu Ming. He lifted his foot and stomped down on Lu Ming, wanting to stomp Lu Ming to death. Come on. Lu Ming's eyes were filled with battle intent as his body glowed with divine light. At this moment, Lu Ming exploded with all his strength. The battle character art increased his combat strength by 5 times, and the 11 types of divine powers circulated as he threw out a punch. Boom! When the punch landed on Man Ku's foot, there was a loud explosion. Lu Ming felt as if he had hit a mountain as a terrifying pressure pressed down on Lu Ming. Lu Ming's body shook violently, and he retreated continuously. His arm felt numb. If not for the fact that he had cultivated the heavenly fiend golden body and had a strong physical body, he would have exploded. However, Lu Ming managed to block Man Ku's kick. You're quite strong. Man Ku's eyes flashed with surprise. He had not expected that Lu Ming would be able to block his attack with his current strength. Kid, let's see how many moves you can take. Man Ku bellowed as he slashed down with his bronze sword. A terrifying sword gleam whistled as it exploded with a terrifying roar. The berserk sword pressure pressed down on Lu Ming from all directions. Tyrannical divine spear, gate of domination, void-shattering sword. Lu Ming let out a long howl. He used all kinds of origin secret techniques, which expanded rapidly and blasted toward Man Ku. Clang! The void-breaking sword was the fastest, and it collided with the opponent's bronze battle sword. A loud sound rang out, and the void-breaking sword trembled violently before it was sent flying. Next, the bronze battle sword slashed at the ruler's gate, and the ruler's gate was sent flying as well. In the end, it collided with the tyrant god spear. Wang! The tyrant god spear violently trembled as a terrifying power passed through the tyrant god spear and entered Lu Ming's body. Lu Ming continuously retreated as he felt his blood and qi churn as he spat out a mouthful of blood. The ancient cultivation method is indeed powerful. I will definitely kill you today. Man Ku shouted coldly. His killing intent became even colder. The stronger Lu Ming was, the stronger his killing intent was. The bronze sword turned into thousands of rays of light, slashing towards Lu Ming. This fellow's strength is indeed formidable. If I were to rely on my own strength, I would definitely be no match for him. Lu Ming sighed in his heart. In comparison, Man Ku was far superior to Lu Ming in many aspects. For example, the primordial divine body had already reached the peak of the 8th transformation. On the other hand, Lu Ming's purple-armored ancient divine body was only at the peak of the 7th transformation. There was an entire level difference. In terms of divine power of origin, Man Ku had awakened 4 times, and his cultivation was at the peak of the divine king realm. He was 2 levels higher than Lu Ming. What Lu Ming could rely on was the battle character art and the universe, myriad Dao arts, 11 types of divine power, and various secret techniques of origin. However, these were not enough to close the gap between them. Now, he could only join forces with Qiu Qiu. Qiu Qiu! With a thought, Qiu Qiu wriggled rapidly and turned into an armor that covered Lu Ming's body. At the same time, bolts of lightning covered Lu Ming's body. A metallic life form? Do you think you can fight me with just a metallic life form? Kill both of you! Man Ku shouted coldly. He was very confident as he slashed down with his bronze sword again. Fight! Lu Ming held the tyrant god spear in one hand and the gate of domination in the other. He soared into the sky and continuously attacked Man Ku. Boom! 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 The 2 of them clashed continuously and exchanged more than 10 moves in an instant. For a moment, there was no clear victor. Lu Ming can actually fight Man Ku? He blocked Man Ku's attack in a head-on confrontation. Many people were shocked and found it hard to believe. They had seen how strong Man Ku was previously. He had killed many top heavens prides consecutively and could be said to be incomparably violent and invincible. Right now, Lu Ming was actually able to fight with Man Ku. This was really incredible. Sizzle, each of Lu Ming's attacks was accompanied by a huge bolt of lightning that poured into Man Ku's body along with his attacks. Man Ku's huge body was covered with lightning. As the lightning attacked, Man Ku's speed slowed down slightly. This was what Lu Ming wanted. Moon of Moon, Son of Sun. Lu Ming controlled the two origin source secret techniques and floated in the air, sprinkling down rays of light that landed on Man Ku's body. He wanted to completely melt him in the rays of light. However, the crystal-like stone armor on Man Ku's body was dazzling. A layer of light appeared and blocked the attacks of the Moon of Moon and Sun of Sunday Clang. Then, Lu Ming broke through Man Ku's attack. The tyrant god spear pierced Man Ku's chest and made a loud sound. Sparks flew in all directions, but it didn't pierce through. It only left a shallow mark on his body. Ha ha ha! Even if you add the metallic life form, you can't break through my defense. Man Ku laughed loudly, extremely arrogantly. Lu Ming's face sank and continued to attack. Later, Lu Ming attacked Man Ku several times, but he couldn't break through Man Ku's defense. Ha ha ha! Man Ku laughed even more unscrupulously. He completely ignored his defense and attacked Lu Ming crazily. For a moment, Lu Ming was pressured to retreat continuously. Qiu Qiu! Lu Ming transmitted his voice to Qiu Qiu. He planned to use the broken sword form. Lu Ming waved his hand and the tyrant god spear disappeared. Then Qiu Qiu wriggled and turned into a huge sword that Lu Ming held in his hand. Clang! Lu Ming swung his sword and collided with Man Ku's bronze battle sword. Boundless energy burst out and swept in all directions. However, after Qiu Qiu turned into this broken sword, its attack power increased to an astonishing level. Man Ku's body shook violently and retreated continuously. Lu Ming seized the opportunity and slashed horizontally with his battle sword, slashing at Man Ku's chest. Sizzle, this time, there was a terrifying sound of friction. Sparks flew in all directions and crystal-like gravel flew everywhere. Impossible! Man Ku's eyes widened as he roared in disbelief, because he felt that his stone armor was about to be broken. Man Ku suddenly stepped on the ground, causing the ground to shake violently. His huge body retreated rapidly and only stopped after retreating for tens of thousands of meters. He lowered his head and looked at his chest. There was a sword wound on his chest that went straight through the stone armor, revealing his flesh and blood. Blood was flowing out continuously. How is this possible? Man Ku was shocked. His eyes widened. He couldn't believe that his defense had been broken. The barbarian god body was originally good at defense. He had cultivated it to the peak of the 8th transformation. His entire body was covered in crystal armor that was indestructible and couldn't be broken. But now it was broken by Lu Ming's sword. Blood was flowing out. Chapter 34:25. The defense that Man Ku relied on was broken, and this made him a little frightened. This brat deserves to die. Man Ku roared. His eyes were filled with blood-red light. He opened his mouth, and a white bone flew out. It was the white bone that he used to deal with Fu Xiao and the others. When he fought with Lu Ming, he kept it. In his opinion, he didn't need the white bone to deal with Lu Ming. But now he used it again. Brat die. Man Ku roared. At the same time he activated the white bone. Waves of roars came out from the white bone. A mysterious and terrifying energy rushed towards Lu Ming. It then entered Lu Ming's head and rushed towards Lu Ming's soul. Lu Ming seemed to have seen a terrifying barbarian god dashing into his mind, brandishing his combat sword and slashing at his soul, wanting to shatter it. It seemed that Fu Xiao and the others had been attacked like this before. However, when the barbarian god attacked Lu Ming's soul, the Jingyu scroll glowed and a layer of light enveloped Lu Ming's soul. When the barbarian god's battle sword slashed at the light barrier shook but nothing happened. If it was an ordinary person, they would have to spend a lot of energy to control their soul to dodge. This way, their strength would be greatly affected. However, Lu Ming didn't care at all. Of course, Man couldn't know that. He thought that Lu Ming's soul was also greatly affected. His face was ferocious, and his killing intent was cold. He waved his bronze battle sword and rushed towards Lu Ming, slashing down at Lu Ming's head. However, Lu Ming swung his sword and deflected Man Ku's bronze battle sword. Then the battle sword didn't stop and continued to slash at Man Ku. Asterisk sizzle. Asterisk the battle sword slashed on Man Ku's body, producing a piercing sound. Then, a deep sword wound appeared on Man Ku's stone armor, penetrating his bones. Man Ku roared in pain and retreated. He shouted in disbelief, "Why aren't you affected?" "Petty tricks," Lu Ming said calmly as he continued to swing his sword towards Man Ku. Man Ku didn't believe it. He did his best to control White Bones. White Bones' roars were like thunder, and the soul attack became even stronger. However, Lu Ming had the protection of the frightening feather painting, so he wasn't affected at all. He continued to attack Man Ku. The two exchanged a few more moves, and Man Ku was once again struck by Lu Ming's sword, leaving a sword wound on his body. Although Man Ku circulated his barbarian god physique with all his might, and the crystal armor on his body was wriggling and healing his wounds, his injuries were real. If this continued, he would become weaker and weaker. "Man Ku, it seems like you've reached your limit," Lu Ming sneered. "Lu Ming, you're relying on a metallic life form. What kind of ability is that? Do you have the ability to fight me fairly?" Man Ku roared. "A fair fight? Ridiculous." Lu Ming sneered and said, "That white bone in your hand is also an external object. Is it fair for you to use it against the enemy? Also, your cultivation is 2 levels higher than mine. Is it fair for you to fight me with a cultivation 2 levels higher?" Man Ku's face turned ugly. However, he didn't dare to fight Lu Ming without using the white bone and at the same level as Lu Ming. Although he was strong, Lu Ming was even more abnormal. If they fought at the same level, he would definitely be the one to lose. "Brat, don't think you can defeat me. Fuse!" Man Ku roared. Then, the white bone emitted a resplendent radiance and rushed into Man Ku's body, fusing with his body. Next, a layer of white bone armor appeared on Man Ku's body, covering his entire body. Clang! Lu Ming slashed his sword on Man Ku's body again, but this time a terrifying explosion rang out. Man Ku's body was forced back, but Lu Ming didn't manage to break through his defense. It can actually be like this. Lu Ming was stunned. Man Ku fused the white bone into his body, and a layer of white bone armor appeared. It actually increased his defense by a large margin. Even Chocho's battle sword couldn't break through his defense. "You want to kill me? Dream on, dream on!" Man Ku roared. His gaze was extremely ferocious, and he couldn't wait to tear Lu Ming into pieces. He had to pay a price for fusing with the white bone, because he could only fuse with the white bone 3 times. After fusing with it 3 times, the white bone would be completely destroyed. Even the ability to affect the soul would disappear. At a critical moment, it could save his life. Unless it was a last resort, he wouldn't use it. But now, because Lu Ming wasted it once, his heart was bleeding. "Die for me!" Man Ku roared and madly rushed towards Lu Ming, slashing out with his bronze battle sword. However, when Lu Ming swung his sword and clashed with the bronze battle sword, Man Ku's huge body was shaken and he was forced back. Although he had fused with the white bone, it only increased his defense. His combat strength didn't change. After repelling Man Ku, Lu Ming took the opportunity to attack. His sword landed on Man Ku's body again, but it was still blocked. He couldn't break through Man Ku's defense. Nest, this guy is like a tortoiseshell. His defense is comparable to Dandan's. Lu Ming was speechless as he muttered. Then he continued to attack. However, every time Man Ku was sent flying by Lu Ming, he couldn't break through his defense. Of course, Man Ku's attack power wasn't enough, and he couldn't cause any harm to Lu Ming. The two of them were in a stalemate. Boom! After another exchange, Man Ku was sent flying for thousands of miles. His expression was ugly. Not good. The time for fusion is almost up. Man Ku was a little anxious. There was a time limit to the fusion of the white bone. Once the time was up, it would disappear. It would be difficult to fuse with it again in a short period of time. However, although he was anxious, he didn't show it on his face. Lu Ming, my divine power is about to run out. At this moment, Qiu was transmitting a message to Lu Ming. His broken sword form consumed a lot of divine power. After a series of attacks, Qiu's divine power was about to run out. Lu Ming's mind raced, but he didn't show it on his face as he stared at Man Ku. However, the two of them didn't attack. They looked at each other from a distance. Kid, you can't break through my defense, Man Ku said savagely. You only know how to hide in your tortoise shell. However, the feeling of hitting a sandbag isn't bad. Lu Ming smiled contemptuously. Humph, I'll spare your life today. However, it's useless for you to rely on this metallic life form. When you can't use this metallic life form anymore, it'll be the day you die. Man Ku shouted coldly. Then he looked at the two youths with headbands on their heads and said, Let's go! The two youths were helpless. Then they shouted, Let's go! Man Ku turned around and left. The people of the barbarian tribe and his subordinates all followed him. The two youths under his control also took their men and left with Man Ku. Lu Ming didn't chase after them. At this moment, only about half of the people were left on the mountain peak. Brother Lu, thank you for your help. Of the 4 experts who had surrounded Man Ku, 2 of them hadn't been controlled by Man Ku. Halfway through, they had been saved by Lu Ming. Now, they thanked Lu Ming. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.